Chapter 866. There's someone here. Hearing that voice, Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not expect that there would be someone here. Jean de Bao was also stunned and subconsciously moved closer to Nye Tian. Brother Nye Tian, don't be nervous. It's my sister. And Jiaming did not panic. He smiled faintly and nodded. Sister. Nye Tian laughed bitterly. He was too nervous. And Jiaming had mentioned before that he had a sister and that his sister was an alchemist. Chen, it's me. And Chiefeng nodded and said, Open the fog barrier. Teacher, who is behind you? And Chen did not immediately open the fog barrier but asked cautiously. Sister, they are my friends. They are injured and need the precious blood of the Qilin to save them, and Jiaming said. People from the outside world? And Chen was surprised. After hesitating for a long time, he finally opened the fog barrier. The fog dissipated and a young girl in purple appeared in front of everyone. She was about 16 or 17 years old. She was graceful and beautiful. Her temperament was like an orchid in an empty valley. She was an Chen and Jiaming's sister. Such a strong mind power! Nye Tian tried to use his divine sense to sense, but it was reflected back. He could not help but frown. Being able to directly reflect his divine sense, and Chen's mind power was definitely above Nye Tian's. Nye Tian's mind power had already reached the 76th level. The girl in front of him had a mind power that was even more terrifying than his. It was incredible! And Chen looked at Nye Tian cold and said indifferently, Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't test those you don't know. Her voice was extremely cold and carried a hint of arrogance. Nye Tian shook his head and smiled. He could not help but feel a little awkward. He had been a little reckless and embarrassed himself. He could not blame her. Sister, brother Nye Tian has no ill intentions. Don't take it to heart. And Jiaming guessed what had happened and stepped forward to explain for Nye Tian. And Chen didn't appreciate it and said coldly, Can't he explain himself whether he has any ill intentions or not? Why do you have to be the one to talk? And Jiaming's expression stiffened. He looked at Nye Tian helplessly. He was the Divine Lord. Normally, even his father and Nan and Great Elder and Chiefeng respected him. However, only this sister of his had always treated him as a younger brother and never as the Divine Lord. And Chen was the only person Jiaming was afraid of. I'm sorry, I was too rash. Nye Tian was helpless. He bowed slightly and apologized sincerely. Humph. And Chen snorted and turned his head, ignoring Nye Tian. Instead, he asked Chiefeng, Teacher, are we really going to use the Qilin's precious blood on them? Nye Tian was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Chiefeng to be Chen's teacher. However, Chiefeng's mental strength didn't seem to be as strong as Chen's. It was a little strange. Yes. Chiefeng nodded and said, This is the Divine Lord's decision. The clan leader and the Elders Guild have already agreed. And Chen's beautiful eyes flickered. She glanced at Jiaming and seemed to be very dissatisfied. However, she still said, Since the Divine Lord, the clan leader, and the Elders Guild have agreed, and Chen naturally wouldn't dare to stop us. Please. As soon as she finished speaking, Chen formed a strange seal with her hands. Kaboom! As she completed the seal, the stone wall that was dozens of meters away shook violently. Then, like two large doors, it slowly separated, revealing a narrow passage that was only 1 meter wide. You guys go in, and Chen finished forming the seal. Her forehead was covered in sweat as she pointed at the narrow passage. Nye Tian nodded and prepared to go in. Divine Lord, accompany them in, and Chiefeng seemed worried about something and said to Jiaming. Yes, and Jiaming agreed and walked in front. He said, Big brother Nye Tian, please follow me. Nye Tian came to the entrance and looked back at Jean de Bao. If the passage were any narrower, Jean de Bao wouldn't be able to enter. Nie Tian controlled Han Tian and the others to go in together. And Iz Chen looked at the backs of Nie Tian and the others with a complicated look. She suddenly asked, "Master, who are they?" Alas! And I Chifeng heaved a long sigh and said, "The silver-haired young man just now, he is the Destined One." The Destined One. And Iz Chen was stunned when she heard those 3 words. Her chest heaved violently. She was the next high priestess of the Dragon Rebel tribe. Of course, she knew what the Destined One meant to the Dragon Rebel tribe. "Master, if he is the Destined One, why do we need to treat him?" After a few seconds, Iz Chen calmed down a little, but the surprise on her face didn't diminish at all. She had sensed that Nie Tian's martial arts foundation had been destroyed. Even if he was extremely talented, he wouldn't be able to achieve much in the future. But the Dragon Rebel tribe wanted to treat Nie Tian. Wasn't that like shooting oneself in the foot? And I Chifeng sighed again and told Iz Chen what had happened in the hall. And Iz Chen was dumbfounded by the end. Following Ai Jiaming, Nie Tian walked out of the passageway quickly. The next moment, what appeared in front of him made him completely dumbfounded. In front of them was a closed valley. It wasn't big, and in the center of the valley was a giant tree. The giant tree was tens of thousands of meters tall. It was in the shape of a dragon, reaching into the sky like a pillar connecting the sky and the earth. What shocked Nie Tian the most was that the giant tree was as red as blood, very glaring. The trunk was red, the branches were red, and even the leaves were red. It was like a long river of blood that stretched to the sky. What was even more peculiar was that each leaf of the giant tree had 7 edges, as if the 7 leaves were connected together. It was very strange. The valley was filled with an extremely strong aura of life. The whole world was enveloped by the surging aura of life, which was full of vitality. 7 lives in 1 leaf. This is. Looking at the giant tree in front of him, Nie Tian trembled all over. His heart seemed to be pounding like 10,000 rabbit. He couldn't stay calm anymore. A name came to his mind, shocking him. Divine Wood of Dragon Blood. Divine Wood of Dragon Blood. This is the legendary Divine Wood of Dragon Blood. Nie Tian screamed inwardly. He looked like he had lost his mind. It had never occurred to him that the legendary Divine Wood of Dragon Blood of ancient times really existed, and it was right in front of him. The Divine Wood of Dragon Blood was the #1 Divine Wood of ancient times, the leader of the 4 Divine Woods. Its most distinctive feature was that it had 7 lives in 1 leaf. Its whole body was red, and its dragon aura could break the sky. Nie Tian was very sure that the giant tree in front of him was the legendary Divine Wood of Dragon Blood. It was said that the Divine Wood of Dragon Blood had the power to reverse life and death. Even if you were a half-dead person, the Divine Wood of Dragon Blood could bring you back to life. More importantly, it was said that the Divine Wood of Dragon Blood could create the body of the Divine Dragon, making it immortal and everlasting. Nie Tian had always thought that the Divine Wood of Dragon Blood did not exist, and that it was just an exaggeration. Chapter 867. Divine Wood of Dragon Blood. Nie Tian stared at the towering tree in front of him for more than 10 seconds. Then he looked better. He had never thought he would see the legendary Divine Wood of Dragon Blood here. Just then, he suddenly looked at Ai Jiaming and asked in surprise, "Is this the precious blood of Kylan?" "Yes." Looking at the Divine Wood of Dragon Blood, Ai Jiaming murmured solemnly, "This is the sacred item of the Dragon Rebel tribe, the precious blood of Kylan." Nie Tian was a bit stunned and didn't come to himself until a long while later. He had thought the precious blood of Kylan was some kind of spiritual medicine. He had never expected it to be a giant tree, and a divine wood of dragon blood at that. It was strange that a tree was called the precious blood of Kylan. Jean de Bao and the others were also looking at the divine wood of dragon blood with excitement in their eyes. Nie Tian took a deep breath. The aura of life that pervaded the air made him feel refreshed. His damaged body was actually healing at a rapid speed. Even the origin star stones inside of him seemed to be excited. The realm origin formation spun madly, and the star power in his body skyrocketed. Such a strong vitality! Nie Tian couldn't help but exclaim. The vitality was so strong that it seemed to be able to reverse life and death. By then, Han Tian and the others had woken up and stood up. They looked better, staring at the divine wood of dragon blood in a daze. An eye jamming, there seems to be some kind of restriction on the precious blood of Kylan. Nie Tian calmed down completely. He had sensed some kind of restriction on the precious blood of Kylan. Since the dragon rebel tribe called the divine wood of Kylan's precious blood of Kylan, then Nie Tian would do as the Romans do and call it the precious blood of Kylan. But then he found there was a restriction power on the precious blood of Kylan, which was even stronger than the vitality. The higher it was, the stronger the restriction power was. Yes. An eye jamming nodded slightly and said, besides the strong vitality, the precious blood of Kylan also has a strong restriction power. The dragon rebel tribe calls this restriction the power of destruction. The vitality and the power of destruction go hand in hand. The higher the trunk, the stronger the vitality and the power of destruction. You can choose to absorb the vitality under the tree. It will be enough to recover your damaged foundation, improve your strength, and strengthen your martial body. Such powerful strength! Nie Tian couldn't help but be startled. Just being at the bottom of the tree already had such terrifying power. If he was at the top of the tree or the top of the tree, just how terrifying would the life force he could absorb be? However, Nie Tian knew that the higher one went, the stronger the destructive power would be. It was not something that ordinary people could endure. Yes. An eye jamming nodded. He pointed at the Kylan's precious blood and continued, the Kylan's precious blood is divided into 10 levels from the root to the top of the tree. Normally, people can only reach the first level. Those with better talents can reach the second level, those with great talents can reach the third level, and those with great talents can reach the fourth level. However, very few people can reach the fifth level. According to the records of the Dragon Rebel tribe, only one person has reached the fifth level in thousands of years. That is my sister, Ni Zichen. So powerful. Nie Tian swallowed hard. He didn't expect Ni Zichen to be the #1 genius of the Dragon Rebel clan in thousands of years. Nie Tian looked at the Qilin blood and discovered that the entire tree was divided into 10 distinct layers. The life and destructive energies of each layer were vastly different. The higher one went, the stronger the energies were. What about you? Which level can you reach? Nie Tian suddenly looked at Ni Jiaming. Since Ni Jiaming was the Xian Long demon saint from hundreds of thousands of years ago, he must be extraordinary. He should be at least on the 7th or 8th level, let alone the 10th level. Otherwise, he wouldn't be worthy of his divine lord's identity. I can only reach the first level. Ni Jiaming smiled bitterly, feeling a little embarrassed. The first level? Nie Tian was stunned. He used his divine consciousness and immediately understood. He found that the absolute shadow restriction on Ni Jiaming became very violent when he stood under the Kylan's precious blood. Ni Jiaming must be in great pain at the moment, but he didn't show it. Ni Jiaming wasn't afraid of the destructive power of the Qilin's precious blood, but the absolute shadow restriction in his body. Brother Nie Tian, you can start. But remember, act within your limits, Ni Jiaming said with a faint smile. He didn't care about it. Yes. Nie Tian nodded heavily. He looked at the people behind him and briefly explained the situation to them. When they learned that the Kylan's precious blood was a sacred relic of the Dragon Rebel clan, the enthusiasm in their eyes became more intense. Being nourished by the precious blood of the Qilin was no less than receiving an inheritance. Xian Qiu was the most excited. He took a step forward and dashed toward the precious blood of the Qilin. He was very fast. In an instant, he reached the 3rd level. Bang! At this moment, Xian Qiu still wanted to go up, but he was hit down by an invisible force. His body shook and he fell down directly. He looked very embarrassed, but he wasn't injured. What a weird power! Xianqiu stood up immediately. He didn't feel embarrassed. He looked serious and tried again. Unfortunately, the result was the same. He was hit down by the invisible force when he reached the 4th level. After several failures, Xianqiu could only accept it. He stopped at the top of the 3rd level. This power is so domineering. Xianqiu had been hit by the destructive power several times. Nie Tian felt that the destructive power was extremely domineering, and he couldn't resist it at all. I wonder if the destructive power targets a warrior's talent or willpower? Nie Tian murmured to himself, Xianqiu is one of the 9 demons. He is very talented in martial arts, but he can only reach the 3rd level. Maybe he doesn't have enough willpower. Then the 3 brothers of the Ren family moved at the same time. They didn't ask for much. They just wanted to reach the 3rd or even the 2nd level. Their talent was much weaker than Xianqiu's. They could only reach the top of the 2nd level. They didn't force it. They waited for the others to come up. Then Yu Jiao and Lu Shan moved. They stopped at the 3rd level, but they still hadn't reached Xianqiu's height. Xianqiu's face relaxed a little when he saw the 5 people who came up were below him. Your Highness, let's go up too, Lin Feng said to Eugene in a low voice. He had woken up. He looked much better. Okay. Eugene nodded seriously. She was looking at the 5th level. 2 people dashed up at the same time. They passed the 1st level, the 2nd level, and the 3rd level easily and landed on the 4th level. Amazing! Everyone exclaimed when they saw the 2 of them go up to the 4th level. Xianqiu's face was very ugly. He was one of the 9 demons, but he could only reach the 3rd level. But the 2 of them reached the 4th level, which made him feel very uncomfortable. Eugene was the saintess of the heavenly demon cult after all. Her identity was extraordinary. But what about Lin Feng? He was just a disciple of the heavenly demon cult. But he also reached the 4th level. This was unacceptable to Xianqiu. Nie Tian looked at the 2 of them. He wasn't surprised. He knew Eugene's talent, and Lin Feng had also shown great strength. It wasn't strange for them to reach the 4th level. Chapter 868. The 2 silhouettes were as fast as lightning. However, just as they neared the 5th floor, an enormous force descended from the sky and landed on them. Bang! Bang! 2 muffled sounds were heard as the 2 silhouettes were struck down. Eugene and Lin Feng stood up, looked at each other, and tried again. Unfortunately, the result was the same. They were struck down as well. Both of them were unwilling to accept this. They tried a few more times, but they all failed. In the end, although the 2 were unwilling, they could only stop at the highest point of the 4th floor. The Kirin's precious blood seems to have determined everyone's talent and perseverance. It seems to have determined everyone's position. Now, no matter how hard you try, you will not be able to surpass the Kirin's determined position. Nie Tian frowned slightly and said to himself, Boss, I'm going up too. At this time, Jean de Bao chuckled. His huge figure was very agile as he flew up. The 1st floor, the 2nd floor, the 3rd floor, he passed through easily. The crowd's eyes froze, their faces full of disbelief. Jean de Bao was the weakest among them. Logically speaking, his talent should be the weakest as well. No one expected him to enter the 4th floor. Xianqiu's expression became complicated and his expression was very ugly. He was beaten black and blue by Jean de Bao. Jean de Bao stopped at the 4th floor with a satisfied smile on his face. He was obviously very satisfied. He originally thought that he would be satisfied if he could reach the 2nd floor. Who knew that after a casual rush, his figure couldn't stop and went straight to the 4th floor. But then, an even more shocking scene appeared. Jean de Bao was about to sit down, but a huge force suddenly appeared and lifted his body up. Damn! What's going on? Jean de Bao was shocked by the sudden force and couldn't help but scream. But the force completely ignored him, and lifted his body past the 4th floor and into the 5th floor. The crowd looked at this extremely strange scene, and their expressions all became dumbfounded. Eugene and Lin Feng desperately wanted to rush up to the 5th floor, but this fatty only wanted to stay on the 4th floor. In the end, the Kirin's precious blood didn't agree and insisted on taking him to the 5th floor. Jean de Bao wobbled and stopped at the top of the 5th floor. The force finally disappeared and his figure also stabilized. And Jiaming saw this scene and was also stunned. It was also the first time he saw this situation. It was extremely strange. What surprised him the most was that Jean de Bao reached the top of the 5th floor. This was a height that even Niz Chen couldn't reach. He really couldn't tell that Jean de Bao's talent was stronger than Eugene and Xian Qiu's. Nie Tian looked at Jean de Bao with narrowed eyes and slightly furrowed brows. He was also very surprised, but not because Jean de Bao had reached the 5th level, but because Jean de Bao had only reached the 5th level. Others might not know, but Nie Tian knew very well that Jean de Bao had the 3,000 fiend god seals within his body, and his natural talent was far greater than Yuejin and Xuanqiu. Even so, Jean de Bao was only able to reach the 5th level. It seemed that the Qilin's precious blood was truly difficult to obtain. At this time, Jean de Bao chuckled and beckoned to Nie Tian. "Come on, boss. It's very easy." Jean as, he said, as Jean as and the other people as. Han Tian, you go first, Nie Tian said to Han Tian, who was standing beside him. He wanted to know which floor Han Tian, who had the heavenly stone body, could reach. Yes. Han Tian nodded, and his eyes became hot. He stepped on the ground and soared into the sky. His speed was very fast. He quickly passed the first 4 floors, but when he reached the 5th floor, his speed slowed down. His figure approached Jean de Bao, and then he rushed to the 6th floor. At this time, the strange force came down. Bang! A muffled sound, but Han Tian's figure only stagnated and shook violently, but he was not blown away. Don't force it! Han Tian frowned and wanted to rush up, but he heard Nie Tian's voice. Han Tian could withstand the attack of the Qilin's precious blood and was not blown down. This was a very terrifying method. However, if he tried to rush up, he would not be able to. Han Tian nodded solemnly, stopping beside Jean de Bao. The others were slightly stunned. No one had expected that the 2 people by Nie Tian's side, Tai Ta and Fatty, would have such high talent. Immediately afterwards, everyone fixed their eyes on Nie Tian, their eyes filled with anticipation. Before, Nie Tian's strength had already shocked everyone, and they did not know which floor he could reach. "Brother Nie Tian, please." Jiaming was also very expectant, and he said with a smile. Nie Tian nodded slightly, and his figure slowly rose up. Just as he leaped up, the Qilin's precious blood shook inexplicably. Suddenly, layers of crimson halos filled the sky like ripples, and the whole sky was dyed red. Huh! Jiaming saw this and could not help but frown. Everyone else was stunned, and they were even more surprised. Nie Tian's figure slowly rose up, and he quickly passed the 1st floor. Then, when he entered the 2nd floor, the Qilin's precious blood shook again, and it was very strange. Then, every time Nie Tian entered a floor, the Qilin's precious blood would shake once, and each time it would be more intense than the last. Slowly, Nie Tian's figure had reached the 6th floor, and he was even higher than Jean de Bao and Han Tian. At this moment, the Qilin's precious blood shook even more violently, causing the surrounding space to shake violently. Nie Tian's figure did not stop, and he was already slowly and steadily rising. In this process, Nie Tian had a very strange feeling. Waves of mysterious power flowed into his body, and he felt that all the meridians in his body were expanding, strengthening, and even going berserk. This kind of power had a great impact on the dragon vein, and it actually had a tendency to tear the dragon vein apart. Nie Tian was very curious. What kind of power was this? As his figure gradually rose, the power in his body became more and more violent, and it was almost tearing the dragon vein in his body apart. But at the same time, Nye Tian felt that the power in his body was constantly increasing, and it was as if he could break through to the next level at any moment. The 8th floor. At this moment, Enai Jiaming and the others were dumbfounded, because Nye Tian had already reached the 8th floor. The 8th floor, Enai Jiaming remembered. It seemed that no one in the Dragon Rebel clan had ever reached the 8th floor. The others were stunned, and they stared at Nye Tian as if they were worshipping a god. However, at this moment, the Qilin's precious blood shook even more violently, and it was as if the entire giant wood had become berserk. The mountains, the earth, and the sky all became berserk, and it was as if the world was about to be destroyed. Nye Tian's figure continued to rise, and he was about to enter the 9th floor. "Come down quickly!" At this moment, an extremely panicked voice was suddenly heard. Chapter 869. Just as Nye Tian was about to enter the 9th level of the Qilin treasured blood, Enai Qifeng and Enai Zichen suddenly appeared and shouted in panic. "Sister!" Enai Jiaming exclaimed in surprise when he saw Enai Zichen. His expression suddenly changed as though something bad was about to happen. Ah! Right at this moment, Nye Tian suddenly felt a terrifying power explode within his body. The sudden, sharp pain caused him to let out a miserable shriek. "Master, there's something strange about this giant wood." Corpse Demon Lord suddenly sensed something and shouted. In the next moment, the Qilin treasured blood suddenly became violent. The red leaves became ferocious and turned into sharp red blades, slashing towards Nye Tian. "Go!" Sensing an extremely strong killing intent, Nye Tian's eyes flickered violently as he dashed towards the ground, not daring to stop for even a second. Boom! The red leaves were like a sky full of fire arrows, blasting towards Nye Tian. Luckily, Nye Tian was fast enough to avoid the fatal blow. Nye Tian's figure was like a bolt of lightning, landing on the ground. When he returned to the ground, the Qilin treasured blood had also calmed down. The killing intent had disappeared, and the valley was filled with life again. It was as if nothing had happened. That was close. Nye Tian looked up at the Qilin treasured blood with lingering fear. The attack just now was extremely powerful. Even if he used the sky shrouding totem, he wouldn't have been able to block it. Luckily, he retreated in time. Otherwise, he would have lost his life to the Qilin treasured blood. "Great Elder, what's going on?" Enai Jianming was slightly stunned and seemed a little angry. The Qilin treasured blood had never experienced such a situation. The huge killing intent just now filled the entire valley, making him feel suffocated. Seeing that Nye Tian was fine and the Qilin treasured blood had also calmed down, Enai Qifeng's tensed old face gradually calmed down. "Idiot!" Enai Zichen's pretty face also recovered a little. She looked at Nye Tian and scolded, "Do you know that you almost destroyed the Qilin treasured blood?" Nye Tian was slightly stunned. He did not understand why Enai Zichen would say that he had almost destroyed the Qilin precious blood when it was clearly the Qilin precious blood that wanted to kill him. Enai Zichen looked at Nye Tian with her beautiful eyes and said coldly, "You are the destined one and have the innate dragon veins in your body. If you go above the 9th level of the Qilin blood pool, you will be killed by the Qilin blood pool. Releasing the dragon qi in your body will also destroy the Qilin blood pool." "So that's how it is." Nye Tian nodded. It seemed that he had almost perished together with the Qilin's precious blood. At that moment, Nye Tian gradually came to a realization. He was the destined one, and his body was filled with powerful dragon energy. The Qilin's precious blood was a sacred item of the Dragon Rebel clan, and it contained the Dragon Rebel Qi. Dragon Qi and Dragon Qi were two extremely conflicting powers, so it was no wonder that the Qilin's precious blood was so hostile towards him, and even wanted to kill him. Nye Tian let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Enai Qifeng and Enai Zichen had arrived in time. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Seeing that Nyetian was fine, and I Chiefing confirmed that the Chilin's precious blood was fine as well. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief and said, Mr. Nyetian, don't climb on the Chilin's precious blood. Just absorb the life energy from below. It will heal your martial arts foundation. Okay. Nyetian smiled bitterly. Given the current situation, this was the only way. Okay. And I Chiefing nodded and said, I will give you 3 days. During these 3 days, the Sacred Lord and Ni Zichen will be here with you. Nyetian nodded slightly. Of course, he understood that Ni Zichen was staying behind to supervise them. The Chilin's precious blood was too important to the Dragon Rebel clan. Nothing could go wrong. Then Ni Chiefing left, leaving Ni Zichen and Ni Jamming behind. Nyetian and the others quickly went into a state of cultivation. Nyetian sat cross-legged and activated the 9 Extremes War God art. The life energy in the surroundings slowly flowed into his body. His 9 Extremes War God art was a super heaven-class martial art. Even at the lowest level, the life energy he absorbed wouldn't be any less than Xian Qiu and the others on the 3rd level. However, the life energy conflicted with the dragon vein. Nyetian used the power of the stars to devour it directly. As the life energy flowed into his body, Nyetian's injuries gradually recovered. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Nyetian was the first to stand up. A powerful sword will surged out of his body and soared into the sky. His entire person was showing off. Ni Zichen frowned when she saw Nyetian standing up. She thought to herself, his talent is so strong. He's only at the end of the 1st level, but he can absorb so much life energy. He can even transform it into life energy. Other than the dragon vein, there seems to be an even stronger force in his body that can devour everything. Ni Zichen's mental energy was very powerful. It was even more terrifying than Ni Chiefing's. She could sense that there was a vast and boundless force in Nyetian's body that devoured the life energy absorbed from the Chilin's precious blood. What was even more terrifying was that in 3 days, Nyetian's strength actually rose from the 6th level of heavenly evolution to the 9th level of heavenly evolution. It was very stable. Nyetian was only at the end of the 1st level of the Chilin's precious blood. If he was at a higher level, it was hard to imagine how much life energy he could absorb. Phew! Nyetian let out a long breath. His strength had risen to the 9th level of heavenly evolution. The power of the stars in his body had awakened 190 billion. The sky-shrouding totem and the eye of starry sky had become even more terrifying. However, these were not what made Nyetian the happiest. What excited him the most was that he had cultivated the 9 Extremes War God art to the 4th level. Previously, he had only cultivated the 9 Extremes War God art to the 3rd level, the Extreme Water Yuan Heavenly Realm. But at this moment, the 9 Extremes War God art had reached the 4th level, the Extreme Fire Scarlet Heaven Realm. The 9 Extremes War God art was the supreme martial art that Nyetian cultivated in his previous life. In his previous life, he was able to move unhindered in the Heaven Realm's divine realm by relying on the 9 Extremes War God art. Nyetian did not know the rank of the 9 Extremes War God art either. But in his previous life, when his strength reached the 9th level Heavenly Emperor, he had only cultivated the 9 Extremes War God art to the 5th level, the Extreme Earth Mystic Heavenly Realm. And at this time, his strength had just reached the 9th level of Heavenly Evolution. The 9 Extremes War God art had actually reached the Extreme Fire Scarlet Heaven Realm. It was truly unexpected to him. Nyetian guessed that perhaps the life energy of the Chilin's precious blood had some kind of effect on the 9 Extremes War God art, allowing him to break through to the Extreme Fire Scarlet Heaven Realm. With the advancement of the 9 Extremes War God art, Nyetian's strength had a qualitative improvement once again. At the very least, his defensive abilities were greatly enhanced. The extreme fire scarlet heaven battle armor could withstand the attacks of martial artists below the third level of heaven being. With a thought from Nye Tian, a layer of crimson light halo surged around his body. A crimson battle armor formed around his body. The extreme fire scarlet heaven battle armor not only had shocking defensive power, but its offensive power was also very terrifying. Such powerful essence energy! When Niz Chen saw the crimson battle armor on Nye Tian's body, her beautiful brows tightened once more, unable to conceal the surprise in her expression. She felt too much shock from Nye Tian. Imperceptibly, her attitude toward the latter had a slight change. But Nye Tian did not notice Niz Chen's reaction. He put away the extreme fire scarlet heaven battle armor and looked at the Qilint's precious blood. He very much wanted to know how much the strength of Jean de Bao and the rest had improved. Chapter 870. At this time, Jean de Bao and the others also came down from the Qilint's precious blood. Everyone's aura had skyrocketed. Ren Wenxing, Ren Liangxing, and Ren Kaixing were all on the second level. Their strength had increased from level 9 heavenly evolution to level 1 heaven being. Although it was only a minor increase, it was a qualitative leap. Under normal circumstances, level 9 heavenly evolution to level 1 heaven being would require years, or even decades of hard work. Xian Qiu, Yu Jiao, and Lu Shan were all on the third level. Xian Qiu's strength had risen from level 9 heavenly evolution to level 2 heaven being, Yu Jiao's strength had risen from level 4 to level 9, and Lu Shan's strength had risen from level 1 to level 6. The three of them were all on the third level, and had absorbed much more life force than the three Rin brothers. It was not strange for them to have such an increase. Eugene and Lin Feng were both on the fourth level. Eugene's strength had risen to level 3 heaven being, while Lin Feng's strength had risen to level 4 heaven being. This surprised Nye Tian slightly. In this aspect, Lin Feng's talent was definitely not below Eugene's. Han Tian and Jean de Bao were both on the 5th level. They had absorbed the most life force. Han Tian's strength had risen from level 5 heavenly evolution to level 2 heaven being, while Jean de Bao's had risen from level 6 divine wheel to level 6. Without a doubt, their strength had increased the most. Boss! Jean de Bao was very excited. He had not planned to come, but now he was overjoyed. In 3 days, his strength had risen by a major level. He was so happy that he could hardly accept it. Nye Tian's gaze swept over everyone, and he seemed very satisfied. He was not in a hurry to ask Jean de Bao. Right now, everyone needed a good rest. Since you have all recovered, let's go. Niz Chen did not waste any more time. He led everyone out of the magical canyon. After leaving the canyon, everyone followed Niz Chen out of the layers of killing formations and returned to the Dragon Rebel Valley. Jianming, take them to rest, Niz Chen said to Jianming. Niz Chen said to Jianming. Then, he turned to Nye Tian and said, Destined One, come with me. The Patriarch and the Elders want to see you. I am Nye Tian. Nye Tian smiled faintly. He didn't like the title, Fated One. It was as if his fate had been arranged by someone else. Nye Tian never believed in fate. He only believed in himself. The others left with Jianming while Nye Tian and Niz Chen headed to the meeting hall. Destined One, how will you deal with the Dragon Rebel clan? Niz Chen suddenly asked on their way. Her pretty eyes were filled with anxiety. She knew the chieftain and the Council of Elders were going to explain what had happened in the past to Nye Tian, and the Dragon Rebel clan was ready to accept any punishment. I don't know. Nye Tian slightly shook his head. Shortly after, he laughed and said, But you don't have to worry. I'm not someone who holds grudges. I only want to know the truth of what happened hundreds of thousands of years ago. As for how to deal with it, it's not up to me. Nye Tian just wanted to know the truth. He really had no idea how to deal with the Dragon Rebel tribe. To put it bluntly, he had always thought of himself as an outsider who had accidentally gotten involved. and he still did not believe that he was destiny. It's not up to you? And Chen was a little surprised. Soon after, she said, you are destiny. Of course, you have the right to make the decision. Nie Tian slightly shook his head. He didn't argue with her. After a while, they arrived at the meeting hall. And Nan and Chifeng and the others were all there. The high-level members of the Dragon Rebel clan all looked very serious, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. I've brought Destiny One. I'll take my leave now. And Zichun slightly bowed and was about to leave. Zichun, you stay. Chief Patriarch and Chifeng waved his hand and said, you should also listen to what happened in the past. Yes, and Zichun responded respectfully. She found a seat lower than the Chief Patriarch and stood there quietly. Nie Tian looked back at Zichun. She was a girl with a sense of propriety. She knew when to advance and when to retreat. She was shrewd. She was not simple at all. Mr. Nie Tian, please sit down. And Nan arranged a seat opposite to Nie Tian, who was on the same level as him. This was how the Dragon Rebel clan treated their most distinguished guest. Nie Tian did not stand on ceremony. He stepped forward and sat down. He said, guys, since we already know who you are, there is no need to stand on ceremony. Please tell us the truth about what happened in the past. And Nan and the others trembled slightly. They did not expect Nie Tian to be so direct. Chief Patriarch, please tell us. And Nan nodded heavily and said to Chifeng. And Chifeng nodded. He looked worried. He looked much older. After hesitating for a long time, he finally said, hundreds of thousands of years ago, the Dragon Rebel clan was a hidden family. At that time, the human clan was in decline. Even the elf clan and the dwarf clan were more powerful than the human clan. The dragon clan ruled the whole world. At that time, the declining human clan was often bullied by other clans. Our Dragon Rebel clan was no exception. Even though we stayed away from disputes, we could not escape the fate of being conquered. At that time, an unprecedented genius appeared in the Dragon Rebel clan, the Black Dragon Demon Saint. The Demon Saint was determined to change the status quo between the Dragon Rebel clan and the human clan. He united with other human clans and defeated some relatively weak clans, such as the Elf clan and the Dwarf clan. But later, the rise of the Dragon Rebel clan aroused the hostility of the Divine Dragon clan and the Phoenix clan. The Dragon Rebel clan could not compete with these powerful clans. In the end, they were banished to the barbaric land. Later, a mysterious force appeared on the continent. The people of that force took a fancy to the Dragon Rebel clan and found the Demon Saint. The Demon Saint cooperated with the mysterious force. The Dragon Rebel clan got a mysterious power, the Dragon Rebel power. Dragon Rebel power. Hearing this name, Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly. He had thought the Dragon Rebel clan was born with the Dragon Rebel clan. He did not expect it to be acquired. The Dragon Rebel clan could suppress the dragon aura. Earlier, Nie Tian's spiritual dragon ring could not withstand a single blow from the fifth elder, and Chifeng. The Dragon Rebel clan gained the power to compete with the Dragon clan. And Chifeng nodded and continued. What happened next was simple. The Dragon clan was defeated by the Dragon Rebel clan. Even the Golden Dragon clan was crushed. The Demon Saint did not want to kill the Dragon clan. He only wanted to fight for the Dragon Rebel clan's status. But at that time, the mysterious force intervened and forced the Demon Saint to destroy the Divine Dragon clan and the Phoenix clan. The Demon Saint did not agree. He wanted to fight back against the mysterious force. But he suddenly found that the Dragon Rebel clan got the Shadow Inhibition as well as the Dragon Rebel clan got the Dragon Rebel power. The Shadow Inhibition. Nie Tian was stunned again. That was the powerful inhibition inside Ni Jiaming's body. So, the other members of the Dragon Rebel clan also had the Shadow Inhibition inside their bodies, but it was not as powerful as the one inside Ni Jiaming's body. Hearing this, Nie Tian understood. Chapter 871. Nie Tian calmed down a bit and asked, and then? Although he hadn't spent a lot of time with Ni Jianming, he could tell that the latter wasn't the kind of person who would compromise easily. Ni Qifeng looked terrible. After thinking for a long time, he finally said, Lord Monster Saint didn't want to follow the mysterious force's arrangement. But the mysterious force threatened the lives of the Dragon Rebel tribe and forced Lord Monster Saint to choose between the Dragon tribe and the Dragon Rebel tribe. Lord Monster Saint had no other choice. He couldn't give up his tribe for the Dragon tribe. Yes. Nie Tian nodded heavily. He hadn't expected that the mysterious force would use such a despicable method to force Demon Saint Xian Long to give in. Lord Monster Saint had no choice but to kill the Dragon tribe. Ni Qifeng nodded slightly and continued. After the Dragon tribe was destroyed, Lord Monster Saint thought everything was over. But the truth was that everything had just begun. What do you mean? Nie Tian was confused. Was the mysterious force not satisfied with the destruction of the Dragon tribe? Ni Qifeng sighed and said, the destruction of the Dragon tribe was just the beginning. The mysterious force asked Lord Monster Saint to destroy all the races, including the dwarfs, the elves, and the orcs. They even forbade the existence of other human races. What? Hearing this, Nie Tian frowned and his expression grew cold. This mysterious force was so greedy. They wanted to destroy all the races, even the human race. What did Demon Saint Xian Long do? Nie Tianling asked coldly. If Demon Saint Xian Long wanted to destroy all the races for the survival of the Dragon Rebel tribe, he would be too selfish and stupid. The mysterious force seemed to have other plans. The Dragon Rebel tribe was only a weapon for killing. If all the other races were destroyed, the Dragon Rebel tribe wouldn't need to exist anymore. Lord Monster Saint! Ni Qifeng suddenly cried out in pain. He choked with sobs and couldn't speak. Nie Tian didn't hurry. He watched quietly. After a long time, Ni Qifeng calmed down a little bit and said, Lord Monster Saint realized something was wrong. He wanted to unite with the other races to fight against the mysterious force. However, the other races didn't trust the Dragon Rebel clan anymore. Instead, they joined hands to kill the Dragon Rebel clan. The Lord Monster Saint had no choice but to start a war with other clans. As a result, those clans were all defeated by the Dragon Rebel tribe and gradually declined. Later, Lord Monster Saint felt he had killed too many people. It was also at that time that the Dragon Rebel High Priest divined the heavenly secret prophecy, which made Lord Monster Saint even more disheartened. In the end, Lord Monster Saint decided to live in seclusion with the Dragon Rebel clan. He built an isolated world in the Dragon Rebel's ancestral land, the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud. The Dragon Rebel clan has been struggling at death's door in the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud for hundreds of thousands of years until today. After Ni Qifeng said that, he heaved a long sigh of relief. He had finally said what he had been suppressing for hundreds of years. This made him feel very relaxed. So that's the case. Nie Tian's eyes flickered violently. No wonder the humans rose inexplicably while the other races declined. It was because of the existence of the Dragon Rebel tribe. He had to admit that the Dragon Rebel tribe had unintentionally changed the history of humans for hundreds of thousands of years. However, Nie Tian still had a lot of questions. He said, the mysterious force couldn't have let the Dragon Rebel tribe live in seclusion, could it? Didn't they come to disturb the Dragon Rebel tribe again? Ni Qifeng looked much more relaxed. He said, the mysterious force couldn't break the inhibition set up by the Lord Monster Saint, but they created another race to destroy the Dragon Rebel tribe. The Soul Splitter? Nie Tian came to himself right away and said in surprise, yes. Ni Qifeng nodded heavily and said, the Soul Splitter could pass through the inhibition of the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud. The Dragon Rebel tribe used to have hundreds of thousands of people, but now only a few hundred are left, and they could be killed by the Soul Splitter at any time. Maybe this is the punishment God has for the dragon rebel tribe. And Chi Feng let out a long sigh. He was very moved. Chief Elder, I want to know what's going on with the coffins hanging on the cliff at the entrance of the forbidden land of wind and cloud. The divine dragons in those coffins don't seem to be dead, right? Nye Tian asked after thinking for a while. I don't know about the coffins hanging on the cliff, either. But the Lord Monster Saint told the people of the Dragon Rebel tribe not to get close to those coffins, and he arranged for his most trusted subordinate, Lord Iron Sword, to guard those coffins, and Chi Feng said heavily. I see. Nye Tian nodded slightly. Something suddenly occurred to him. He said with a faint smile, I have another question. Mr. Nye Tian, please go ahead. And Chi Feng was very respectful. Nye Tian said, since the Dragon Rebel tribe was able to destroy the Divine Dragon tribe and defeat the allied forces of many races, they should be very powerful. But I can see that you are only in the Celestial Being realm, and even the Lord Monster Saint is only in the 9th tier of the Celestial Being realm. Why is that? In Nye Tian's opinion, the Dragon Rebel tribe was an ancient race that had existed for hundreds of thousands of years. They could easily reach the peak of the Celestial Emperor realm, and it wouldn't be surprising if they had God realm warriors. But Enai Nan and I Chiefing, and the others were only in the Celestial Being realm, which was very strange. It's because of the absolute shadow inhibition in our bodies. And Chi Feng sighed and said, the absolute shadow inhibition can suppress the reverse dragon chi in the Dragon Rebel tribe. The stronger they are, the stronger the absolute shadow inhibition will be. So, the Dragon Rebel tribe doesn't dare to cultivate too much. Warriors in the Celestial Emperor realm can no longer suppress the absolute shadow inhibition in their bodies, and they will be killed by it. That's right. Nye Tian nodded and then asked, those soul splitters aren't very powerful. I guess they have the absolute shadow inhibition in their bodies, too. Yes. And Chi Feng nodded and said, the soul splitters are a race created by a mysterious force. Their soul splitter chi is the nemesis of the reverse dragon chi. The Dragon Rebel tribe members with the same strength can hardly compete with the soul splitters. Nye Tian took a deep breath, his eyes sparkling with a fiery light. This mysterious force was so powerful that it could create a race out of nothing. This was probably the power that only a real god could have. Without a doubt, this mysterious force that tried to destroy all the races must be a god-state force that surpassed the Celestial Emperor realm. Nye Tian frowned and thought. If everything in Chi Feng said was true, then the Dragon Rebel tribe's mistake wasn't as serious as he had imagined. The real culprit was the mysterious force behind it. Even without the Dragon Rebel tribe, this mysterious force would have cultivated other races. The Dragon Rebel tribe was just being used. Destiny, what are you going to do with the Dragon Rebel tribe? At this moment, Enai Zichen suddenly stood up. Her beautiful eyes sparkled with a strange light, and she asked in a deep voice. The others of the Dragon Rebel tribe all looked at Nye Tian, waiting for his answer. Well, Nye Tian thought and hesitated. He didn't know what to do at the moment. Woo! At this moment, a sonorous horn suddenly sounded, echoing in the hall. It sounded hurried. Chapter 872. The Rebel Dragon horn suddenly sounded in the lobby. The Dragon Rebel tribe fell into panic. The Rebel Dragon horn was an ominous object of the Dragon Rebel tribe. It would only be blown in emergencies. What's going on? Enai Nan came to himself and screamed. He tried to stay calm, but he couldn't hide the panic on his face. Third Elder, go and have a look. Enai Chiefing shouted to Enai Chile, who was next to him, after calming down a little. Enai Chile agreed. When he was about to leave, a member of the Dragon Rebel clan ran over in a panic and shouted, Chieftain, Grand Elder, something bad has happened. The Soul Splitter is here. The Soul Splitter. Enai Nan, Enai Chiefing, and the others were all struck dumb. Their faces turned pale instantly. The Soul Splitter, the nemesis of the Dragon Rebel tribe, had found the Dragon Rebel Valley. For hundreds of thousands of years, the Dragon Rebel tribe had survived the Soul Splitter because the Soul Splitter couldn't find the Dragon Rebel Valley. But now, the Soul Splitter had shown up all of a sudden. For the Dragon Rebel tribe, this was a disaster. The Dragon Rebel Valley is very secretive. How could the Soul Splitter find it? Fifth Elder Enichiun was the first to calm down. He said this seriously, but he looked at Nye Tian with an unfriendly look. The Dragon Rebel Valley hadn't been exposed for hundreds of thousands of years. The Soul Splitter had shown up 3 days after Nye Tian and the others had arrived. No one would believe that this had nothing to do with Nye Tian. Nye Tian's eyes were gloomy. He didn't explain anything but said, "Don't panic. The Soul Splitter isn't that scary." "Right." And Nan nodded seriously and said, "Inform the tribe to prepare for battle." It was too late to say anything now. Even if it was Nye Tian who had drawn the Soul Splitter here, it was useless to blame him. Fifth Elder, take the women and children to the secret chamber first. Enichiefeng said to Enichiun next to him. Then he looked at Nye Tian and said, "Mr. Nye Tian, let's go out and have a look." Enichiefeng vaguely felt that Nye Tian might become a key figure in the battle between the Dragon Rebel clan and the Soul Splitter. The Soul Splitter had an innate restraining power over the Dragon Rebel tribe, but Nye Tian wasn't a member of the Dragon Rebel tribe. Besides, the dragon aura in his body had a strong restraining effect on the Soul Splitter. This might be a turning point for the Dragon Rebel tribe against the Soul Splitter. Nye Tian nodded solemnly. His figure flashed and arrived outside the hall. The scene that entered his eyes completely stunned him. The Dragon Rebel Valley was filled with soul-splitting wolves, and they were rushing over like a tide. Many members of the Dragon Rebel clan had been torn to pieces by the soul-splitting wolves. The whole valley was filled with a strong smell of blood. Heavens! At this moment, Against the Wind's figure rushed out. When he saw the scene before him, he actually howled out in extreme pain. Courting death. Nye Tian didn't bother with Enichiefeng. His lips curled into a cold smile. His figure was like fire as he charged forward. His figure was extremely fast, like a ferocious tiger descending a mountain and pouncing into a pack of wolves. Bang! 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 Nye Tian attacked 3 times in a row, killing the soul-splitting wolves in front of him on the spot. His current strength was already at the Sky Evolution realm. He had awakened 190 billion stars' power in his body, and his sword will had become purer. Coupled with the improvement of the 9 gods of war art, any one of his moves was enough to kill a soul-splitting wolf instantly. But Nye Tian knew that the soul-splitting wolves in front of him were the weakest. They were only 3 or 4 meters long. There were still the soul-splitting wolf king, the soul splitter, the soul splitter commander, and even more powerful enemies waiting for him. "Help! Save my child!" A panicked voice rang out in the distance. A middle-aged woman was wailing. She was carrying a baby a few months old on her back. She was running for her life in a panic. Behind the woman, dozens of soul-splitting wolves were chasing her relentlessly. They were about to catch up with her and tear her to pieces. Bastard! Upon seeing this, Nye Tian let out a cold snort. Clad in the flaming crimson heaven battle armor, he looked like a ball of burning flames as he streaked across the sky. Rumble! The moment the soul-splitting wolves were about to pounce on the woman, Nye Tian slashed down with his sword. A terrifying sword will bloomed in the air. A sword shadow that was hundreds of meters long came crashing down like a mountain. Dozens of soul-splitting wolves were killed by the murderous sword will. Nye Tian raised his hand slightly and sent the woman to the side of the hall. Just then, countless soul-splitting wolves charged forth. There was a black mass of them, numbering in the hundreds and thousands. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Before Nye Tian could move, the sound of arrows piercing through the air came from above him. He looked up and saw a sea of fire. It was the soul-piercing arrow he had seen earlier. The soul-piercing arrow was a sharp arrow that the Dragon Rebel clan had specially forged to deal with the soul-splitting men. It was extremely lethal against the soul-splitting men. Nye Tian had seen it with his own eyes. The soul-piercing arrow had turned the soul-splitting men into sieves. Seeing the arrows raining down from above like a storm, Nye Tian suddenly became nervous. He shouted, "Don't shoot!" Puff, puff, puff. The soul-piercing arrow fell from the sky. The overwhelming pressure spread over. Countless soul-splitting wolves were smashed into meat paste. The scene was bloody. The scene was extremely tragic. Nye Tian moved. He jumped up high and shouted to an Chiefing, "Chief Elder, don't let them shoot." An Chiefing was a little surprised. He found it strange, but he still obeyed Nye Tian. He shouted, "Everyone, stop shooting." Nye Tian let out a sigh of relief in the air. He didn't let the Dragon Rebel clan use the soul-piercing arrow not because he cherished the lives of the soul-splitting wolves, but because he thought it would be a waste to use the soul-piercing arrows on the soul-splitting wolves. The soul-piercing arrows of the Dragon Rebel clan had to be limited. They had to be used as the last trump card. Nye Tian guessed that even the soul-splitting wolf transformed from the soul-splitting commander of the soul-splitting men would find it hard to bear such a dense number of soul-piercing arrows. Nye Tian looked over. Countless soul-splitting wolves were charging at him desperately. There were more than 10,000 of them. They were running like black lightning bolts. Whoosh! Nye Tian frowned. He slashed down with his sword. A dreadful sword will fell on the ground, leaving a horrifying trench. Anyone who crosses this line will be killed without mercy. As the cold, emotionless roar faded away, Nye Tian's whole body surged with violent sword will. Countless sword shadows appeared in the void. They fell like a sky full of arrows. What a dreadful sword will! An Chiefing and others were shocked by the strength Nye Tian had shown when they saw this scene outside the hall. Not until then did they realize what An Jianming had said about Nye Tian killing the soul-splitting commander was absolutely true. Howl, howl, howl. The sky full of sword shadows fell. Countless miserable howls were heard. All the soul-splitting wolves were severely injured. Many were even killed directly. A faint smile appeared at the corner of Nye Tian's mouth. He hadn't expected that his sword intent had already reached such a terrifying level. Howl! Right at this moment, a shrill wolf howl came. Outside the valley in the distance, a huge black wolf appeared. It was the soul-splitting Wolf King. Chapter 873. Seeing the soul-splitting Wolf King appear, Nye Tian was not afraid at all. Instead, he was full of fighting spirit. Last time, he almost died at the hands of these soul-splitting wolves. This time, he must kill all of these beasts. Teacher! At this time, a voice sounded, and Han Tian's figure appeared in the distance. Then, the others also rushed over. Damn! So many black wolves! Jean de Bao couldn't help but cry out when he saw the black mass on the ground. Nye Tian looked at the people around him. Seeing that they were all here, he said, "Ren brothers Yu Jiao, Lushan, Jean de Bao, I'll leave these soul-splitting wolves to you." These 6 people were relatively weak, but they were more than enough to deal with the soul-splitting wolves that were on the verge of death. Yes, the 3 Ren brothers answered. They naturally understood that Nye Tian left them behind not only to kill all the soul-splitting wolves, but also to protect the safety of Yu Jiao and the others. The 3 of them were at the Celestial Realm. Nye Tian believed that they had the ability to do so. Lin Feng, Eugene, Xian Qiu, Han Tian. Let's go meet those soul-splitting wolf kings. Nye Tian smiled sinisterly. His figure moved, and he was the first to charge out. The other 4 nodded slightly and followed. What are they going to do? And Zichen saw Nye Tian and the others rush out. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and her voice became slightly shrill. Don't worry, big brother Nye Tian is very strong. He's more than enough to kill those soul-splitting wolf kings. An Jianming was standing behind An Zichen. He was very confident in Nye Tian. An I Chiefing nodded, then said to an I Zichin, Zichin, you stay here and watch. The Holy Lord and I will go settle down the clansmen first. We'll be back soon. Okay. An I Zichin agreed, but there was a hint of worry in her expression. The strength that Nye Tian displayed just now shocked her. She didn't doubt that Nye Tian could kill the soul-splitting Wolf King. However, there were still the soul-splitting people, the soul-splitting commander, and even the soul-splitting human king. Wasn't Nye Tian seeking death by rushing out like this? Idiot! Suddenly, an I Zichin realized something and said in his heart, why should I worry about him? He is the fated one. It is better for him to die. Nye Tian, Han Tian, and the others rushed out of the Dragon Rebel Valley and landed on a huge rock. Only now did they realize that the entire Dragon Rebel Valley had been surrounded by the Soul Splitter. There were several hundred soul-splitting wolf kings in front of them, and each of them was over 10 meters in length. Black light surged from their bodies, and it was none other than the peculiar soul-splitting chi. Countless soul-splitters stood behind the soul-splitting wolf king, ready to attack at any moment. Nye Tian took a look and saw that there were thousands of soul shredders, with more than 100 soul shredder captains among them. It was a terrifying lineup. After transforming, the Soul Splitter commander was equal to a warrior in the 5th level of the Sky Human realm. This kind of strength was enough for them to fight against the Dragon Rebel Patriarch. However, the Dragon Rebel clan only had a dozen patriarchs, and only a few of them were strong. They couldn't withstand a single blow. Teacher, what should we do? Han Tian gasped inwardly when he saw the Soul Splitter's formation. However, the determination in his eyes did not waver. Kill! Nye Tian squeezed a word out of the corner of his mouth. He was filled with a strong killing intent. At this moment, the only thing he could do was to fight to the death. He would kill as many as he could, and if he couldn't, he would retreat to the Dragon Rebel Valley and guard the hall with his life. Okay! Han Tian roared and was the first to move. He dashed toward the soul-splitting Wolf King. His upper body was petrified, and his lower body grew several times larger. Like a sky stone giant, he dashed over. Han Tian was already in the 2nd level of the Sky Human realm, and he had the Sky Stone body. With his defense, the soul-splitting Wolf King was no match for him. Boom! Han Tian smashed into the wolf pack like a giant rock, stirring up a wave of blood, jade, and flesh. Countless soul-splitting wolf kings were smashed into meat paste. The scene was extremely bloody. At this moment, Xian Qiu also moved. Blood-colored black sand appeared around him, forming a giant hand made of black sand in the air. It grabbed several soul-splitting wolf kings and crushed them with a sudden force. Eugene and Lin Feng looked at each other and moved at the same time. The blood jade demonic lotus and the black wings appeared at the same time, lifting countless soul-splitting wolf kings into the air and crushing them into meat paste. Nye Tian watched from the side, but didn't make a move. He was waiting for an opportunity. These hundreds of soul-splitting wolf kings were just the prelude. The truly terrifying opponents were the soul splitters and their commanders, who were ready to make a move. Boom! A whoa! Countless sounds of killing and screams rang out. The sky was filled with a bloody and violent aura, and the ground was littered with the corpses of the soul-splitting wolf kings. In just a moment, the hundreds of soul-splitting wolf kings were almost all dead, and only a few dozen were left. The strength of Han Tian and the others had increased qualitatively, and it was very easy for them to deal with the soul-splitting wolf kings. Bastard! At this moment, a roar rang out. One of the soul splitters finally couldn't take it anymore. He rushed into the sky, and his body underwent a terrifying transformation in the air. He was transforming. Humph! Almost at the same time, a disdainful voice rang out, and a terrifying sword will whistled out. Puff! The sword will swept past, directly piercing through the soul splitter, and he didn't even have time to complete his transformation. Nye Tian stood in the air, his eyes sharp and murderous. He had waited for a long time for the soul splitter to make a move. Hiss! The tragic scene in the air caused all the soul splitters to suck in a breath of cold air. They looked at the silver-haired martial artist in the air with burning eyes, and their eyes revealed uncontrollable fear. A martial artist with the strength of the Heavenly Evolution 9th level could actually easily kill a soul splitter. This was too strange. Kill him! Suddenly, a low voice rang out. It was very strange, and it seemed to come from all directions. It was like a thunderclap, and it was very oppressive. As soon as the voice fell, several soul splitters leaped up at the same time. Their blood-red eyes locked onto Nietian, and a bloodthirsty killing intent surged out. You think you can do it? Nietianling laughed and didn't waste any time. He directly slashed out with the heaven-sword. The sword bloomed in the air, and several destructive beams descended. Boom! 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 After several muffled sounds, the soul splitters were directly killed, and they didn't understand what was going on. How powerful! The soul splitter on the ground trembled violently, and his face was full of disbelief. If Nietian's previous attack had been a sneak attack, then he had relied on his strength to kill the soul splitter's head-on. Dragon energy! At this time, a panicked voice rang out. A soul splitter pointed at Nietian and screamed. He has dragon energy on him. He's not a member of the dragon rebel tribe. Did you just find out? Nietianling smiled coldly, and the coldness in his eyes was obvious. However, the next moment, a familiar voice suddenly rang out. Of course he's not a member of the dragon rebel tribe. He's a person like me. A figure appeared, and his cold eyes locked onto Nietian with a hint of playfulness. Chapter 874. Li Tianhao. Nietian's eyes flickered. He didn't expect Li Tianhao to be in cahoots with the soul splitter. Li Tianhao was from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. Like Nietian, he had absorbed the dragon chi of a divine dragon. However, Nietian had absorbed the most dragon chi, and Li Tianhao was much weaker. It's you. Nietian suddenly realized something. His face darkened and he said, You brought the soul splitter here. Of course. Li Tianhao smiled coldly and showed a finger with a ring on it. It was the dragon ring. He said calmly, Nietian, I forgot to tell you that the dragon rings can sense each other. So, no matter where you go, I can find you. Nietian's face suddenly changed. He didn't expect it to be him who had led the soul splitter to the Dragon Rebel Valley. Teacher, don't talk nonsense with him. Let me kill him. Han Tian roared after killing the last soul splitter Wolf King. He charged at Li Tianhao. Watch out. Nietian didn't expect Han Tian to be so impulsive. He shouted, but it was too late. Han Tian had already charged at him. You're courting death. Li Tianhao smiled coldly and struck with his palm. Suddenly, a dragon roar was heard, and the shadow of a dragon whizzed out. The soaring dragon chi filled the space within thousands of meters. It was extremely powerful. Han Tian, who was in mid-air, suddenly felt a terrifying pressure, causing him to freeze. Shortly after, he was struck by the dragon image, and was sent flying, smashing heavily into a huge boulder. The boulder was smashed into smithereens. Puff! Han Tian stood up immediately after falling to the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his face turned pale. Han Tian, are you okay? Nietian moved and landed next to Han Tian. I'm fine. Han Tian forced a smile. His breathing was steady and he was fine. Not dead? Li Tianhao's gaze darkened when he saw that Han Tian wasn't dead. Shortly after, he let out a strange laugh and said, Looks like I'm not the only one who improved in strength. Nietian suddenly raised his head and looked at him coldly. He had already sensed that Li Tianhao's strength had risen to the 3rd level of the Heaven Realm, 1 level higher than Han Tian. The fact that Li Tianhao's strength had risen so quickly must have had something to do with the Soul Splitter. Li Tianhao, since you appeared here today, I will definitely not let you leave alive. Nie Tian said calmly, but his tone carried a strong killing intent. You want to kill me? Li Tianhao sneered and said, Do you think the people behind me will agree? Li Tianhao had brought the soul-rending man here, so he was naturally unscrupulous. Unfortunately, he was completely wrong. Li Tianhao, go kill him. As soon as Li Tianhao finished speaking, a low voice sounded from behind him. It was vast and boundless, and he had no idea where the voice came from. Lord Soul King, this brat's strength is very strange. I'm afraid. Li Tianhao broke out in a cold sweat, and his voice trembled. Cut the crap. Before he could finish, he was interrupted by the low voice. Then, an invisible evil force appeared and pushed Li Tianhao out. Kill him! Kill him! Kill him! As Li Tianhao was pushed out, the soul splitter behind him began to shout like a tsunami, as if they were cheering for him. Humph! Nie Tianling sneered and locked his murderous gaze on Li Tianhao. He said, Li Tianhao, you worked for the soul splitter, but you didn't expect him to not care about your life at all. You brought this upon yourself. You can't live. Shut up. Li Tianhao was furious. His gaze suddenly turned cold as he gritted his teeth and said, Nie Tian, do you really think I'm afraid of you? You have the dragon vein, and so do I. I'm in the third heaven human realm, but you're only in the ninth heaven evolution realm. How are you going to fight me? You'll know once you try. Nie Tian's gaze was as calm as a cold lake. There was no ripple at all. You're courting death. The calmer he was, the angrier Li Tianhao became. The latter screamed and punched out. The space suddenly tightened, and a mighty dragon's might descended, blasting toward Nie Tian fiercely. Nie Tian did not dodge. He stabbed out with the long sword in his hand, and a murderous sword will tore through the air. The proud sword will was domineering, the star soul sword will was vigorous, and the thunderbolt sword will was mighty. The three sword wills merged perfectly, and a sword shadow blasted out, exterminating and murderous. Boom! The dragon's might and the sword shadow collided, and the void trembled. Then there was a scream, and Li Tianhao's figure was sent flying. What a terrifying sword will! Everyone's eyes trembled violently when they saw this, and their expressions were extremely incredulous. One strike. Just one strike, and Nie Tian knocked Li Tianhao down. One should know that Li Tianhao was a martial artist in the third heaven human realm, and he had the dragon vein. Nie Tian, you. Li Tianhao stood up. He was not seriously injured, but his face was as pale as a sheet, and his eyes were filled with fear. He did not expect Nie Tian's strength to be so tyrannical. A few days ago, he could still compete with Nie Tian, but now he was actually knocked back by one strike. Are you afraid? Nie Tianling smiled coldly. The strike just now seemed casual, but he had used the last move of the advanced 3 moves of the AO sword technique, Mad Doomsday, Reverse Kill. Nie Tian was slightly surprised that Li Tianhao was able to withstand the sword strike without sustaining any serious injuries. If Li Tianhao didn't have the dragon vein, he would have been seriously injured even if he didn't die. Nie Tian, don't kill me. I'll ask the Soul Splitter to spare your lives. What do you think? Li Tianhao's eyes flashed, and he suddenly transmitted his voice to Nie Tian. Nie Tianling laughed and said calmly, Li Tianhao, you're too naive. In the eyes of the Soul Splitter, you're just a dog. Now that the prey has been found, you're useless as a dog. You can't even save your own life, and you still want to negotiate with me? Li Tianhao looked smart, but he was actually an idiot. The Soul Splitter would only trust his own kind. Why would he trust an outsider? Li Tianhao was the tool the Soul Splitter used to find the Dragon Rebel tribe. Now that they were in the Dragon Rebel Valley, Li Tianhao had lost his use and was of no value to the Soul Splitter. Sweat beaded on Li Tianhao's forehead, and he was speechless. He knew what Nie Tian said was true. I'll kill you. The next moment, Li Tianhao suddenly went crazy. He dashed straight at Nie Tian, releasing all the dragon chi in his body. He was surrounded by the shadow of a dragon that was hundreds of meters long. He pounced at Nie Tian like a wild beast. No matter what, Li Tianhao had to make the last struggle. If he could kill Nie Tian, he might be able to save his life. "You're courting death." Nie Tian sensed the violent dragon qi coming at him. He curled his lips into a resolute, murderous smile. He thrust his sword out. The sword moved with thunder, and a giant thunder dragon appeared. Its deafening roar resounded in the sky. Rumble! The two dragons collided with each other. Horrible power suddenly exploded. The two surging powers destroyed and devoured each other. They couldn't destroy each other for a while. Chapter 875. In the void, Nie Tian and Li Tianhao were fighting each other, the two dragons devouring each other. At that critical moment, a 100-meter-long soul-splitting wolf suddenly dashed out, wreaking havoc in the air as numerous beams of frosty light shot down towards Nie Tian, wreaking havoc in the air. Soul-splitting commander. When Nie Tian saw the soul-splitting wolf, he immediately knew that it was a soul-splitting wolf that the soul-splitting commander had transformed into. It was extremely powerful. At the moment, he was being held back by Li Tianhao. If he were to split his attention to deal with the soul-splitting wolf, he would definitely be severely injured by Li Tianhao. Nie Tian did not expect the soul-splitting commander to attack at this moment. At this moment, Han Tian and the rest were very far away from Nie Tian. Even if they wanted to attack, it was too late. "Master, leave this wolf cub to me." At the critical moment, the corpse demon lord's voice sounded. He came out of the chaotic original coffin and turned into a cloud of black qi. Countless black tentacles appeared in the void and attacked the soul-splitting wolf. Nie Tian let out a long sigh of relief. With the corpse demon lord's current strength, even if he could not fight the soul-splitting wolf head-on, he could still hold it back for a while. When Li Tianhao saw the soul-splitting commander attack, he thought that the time to kill Nie Tian had come. He did not expect Nie Tian to have a backup plan. At this moment, he was very clear that between him and Nie Tian, only one of them would die. "Nie Tian, go to hell!" With a deep roar, Li Tianhao circulated all his yuan qi. Billowing dragon qi surged out as he made a last-ditch effort. Nie Tian's body moved slightly, and his battle intent surged wildly. With a thought, the 9 dragon veins sensed it, and the surging power of thunder burst out. In the void, the weather changed, and tens of thousands of lightning bolts came one after another. The surrounding thousands of meters turned into a sea of thunder. The dragon's shadow could no longer withstand the battle of the two dragons and was directly devoured by the thunder dragon. "Ah!" Li Tianhao screamed as he felt a vast power of thunder pressing down on him, as if it wanted to strip him of everything. He wanted to withdraw and retreat, but his body was firmly controlled by a pair of invisible giant hands, unable to move. "Nie Tian, what did you do to me?" In the next moment, Li Tianhao suddenly felt the dragon qi in his body being released and devoured by the power of lightning. The more he struggled, the more despair he felt. He couldn't help but scream. "Li Tianhao, it's a waste for someone like you to have dragon energy. Why don't you let me devour you?" Nie Tian stood in the midst of the 10,000 bolts of lightning like a god of lightning. His cold and emotionless voice rang out, and the lightning aura around his body became even more intense. He wanted to use the sea of lightning to devour the dragon qi in Li Tianhao's body. The power of lightning possessed a devouring attribute to begin with. With the addition of the power of the stars, it was incomparably domineering. As the dragon energy in his body continued to surge, Nie Tian's aura skyrocketed. Li Tianhao was at the 3rd level of heaven being. Devouring his dragon qi, Nie Tian could at least break through to the heaven being realm. No! Li Tianhao's body was engulfed by the power of lightning. His eyes were filled with despair as he screamed at the top of his lungs. Unfortunately, it was useless. In the blink of an eye, all the power in his body was devoured by the power of lightning. Even the dragon vein in his body returned to normal. It was even weaker than a normal person's origin meridian. On the other hand, Nietion's aura skyrocketed to the extreme. An invisible force enveloped the entire space. It was the celestial realm that only heaven-being realm martial artists possessed. After absorbing Li Tianhao's power, Nietion's strength rose to the first level of heaven-being realm. Nietion, I'll kill you! With the dragon energy in his body drained, Li Tianhao went completely crazy. He roared like a madman. However, in the next moment, his body was engulfed by the power of lightning and disappeared completely. Not even his bones were left. Nietion stretched out his arm, and a dragon ring appeared. It was the 3-star dragon ring that Li Tianhao had on him. Li Tianhao, the secret of the cliff coffins can only be kept after you die. Nietion looked at the 3-star dragon ring, smiled faintly, and put it away. He had been brooding over not being able to kill Li Tianhao before because the secret of the cliff coffins could not be leaked. Otherwise, the people of the 10,000 demons dragon abyss would go crazy over it. Now that Li Tianhao was dead, Nietion felt a lot more relaxed. After killing Li Tianhao, Nietion looked at the corpse demon king. In the void, countless black tentacles wrapped around a giant black wolf, trapping it tightly and making it unable to move. Master, finish it! The corpse demon king's voice rang out, sounding a little excited. Okay. Nietion nodded slightly and stabbed out with his sword. The void suddenly tightened, and a terrifying and chilling destruction will descended. The brilliance of the sword tore through the void and arrived with a loud bang. This was Nietion's first sword attack after advancing to the heaven-being realm. Its power was beyond imagination. Puff! When the sword's shadow fell, there was a crisp sound of the air breaking. The soul-splitting wolf was directly cut in half. Blood splattered, and the scene was extremely bloody. What a powerful sword attack! Nietion's figure froze in the air, and even he himself was stunned. The power of this sword attack was beyond his expectation. A commander of the soul-splitting tribe died tragically. All the soul-splitting tribe members were stunned at the sight of this. They looked at the silver-haired figure with intense fear and even fear in their eyes. However, Nietion knew clearly that he could kill a commander of the soul-splitting tribe with one sword attack, not only because he was strong enough, but also because the dragon chi could restrain the soul-splitting chi. Dragon chi, the dragon-opposing chi, and the soul-splitting chi. The three forces were like a pair of scissors that restrained each other. If Nietion were to fight against the dragon rebel clan, it wouldn't be so easy, because the dragon chi would be suppressed by the dragon-opposing chi. There was a dead silence. Only the heavy panting of the soul-splitting tribe could be heard. Kill him! Suddenly, a voice rang out. The power contained in the sound wave lifted countless giant rocks and rushed toward Nietion. Come on! With a shake of his body, Nietion knocked away the giant rocks in the air. His eyes were filled with raging killing intent and the desire to fight. Behind him, Han Tian and the others also showed up, ready to have a life-and-death battle with the soul-splitting tribe. Be careful. If you get hurt, retreat to the valley at once, Nietion said in a deep voice after taking a look at the people around him. They were facing thousands of soul-splitting tribe members, over 100 commanders, and a soul-splitting tribe king with unfathomable strength. Except for the dragon chi in Nietion, which could restrain the soul-splitting tribe, it would be very difficult for the others to deal with the soul-splitting tribe. After saying that, Nietion flashed into the army of the soul-splitting tribe. He had found that these soul-splitting tribe members weren't that strong before they changed their voices. They were easy to kill. Crack, crack. Seeing Nietion charging at them, countless soul-splitting tribe members changed their forms on the spot. The air was filled with the sound of muscles being torn apart. Nietion moved extremely fast. His whole body was burning with crimson flames. The red heaven armor of polar fire was activated. Like a mass of crimson fire, he fell into the soul-splitting tribe members, raising a storm of blood. Bang bang bang. Countless muffled sounds rang out. Dozens of soul-splitting tribe members were smashed to pieces by Nyetian before they could change their forms. Chapter 876. Nyetian was surrounded by countless soul-splitting wolves. There was no fear on his face. Instead, his face was filled with killing intent and fighting spirit. He had just advanced to the Deva realm, so he could use these soul-splitting wolves to stabilize his realm. A wood dash! A strange howl rang out as a soul-splitting wolf leaped high into the air. Its black body dashed over, its sharp claws dancing in the air as a cold light pierced through the air, seemingly capable of ripping apart everything. Die! Nyetian didn't even look at him. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he stabbed out with his sword. A terrifying sword intent whistled out, and the brilliance of the sword burst into a dazzling sword light, accompanied by a cold, killing intent that was as cold as iron. Pooh! The sound of flesh being pierced could be heard as the soul-splitting wolf was pierced through by the sword light. It howled in pain as it fell to the ground, twitched a few times, and then died. With a casual swing of his sword, he killed a 30-meter-long soul-splitting wolf. Nyetian's current strength was terrifying to the extreme. After that, a few more soul-split wolves charged over, yet all of them suffered the same fate. All of them were killed by a single strike of Nyetian's sword. Nyetian became more and more courageous as he fought. His figure flickered incessantly, and everywhere he went, there would be wails of agony. Above the Dragon Rebel Valley, the people of the Dragon Rebel tribe looked at the silver-haired man in disbelief. The strength that Nyetian displayed was far beyond their expectations, even subverting their understanding of martial arts. Great Elder, Destiny's strength is so strange. Perhaps he can withstand the Soul Splitter's attack. Fifth Elder Enichiun looked at Nyetian with a burning gaze and said with some excitement, "Yeah." Third Elder Enichile is also very excited, he said. This person can kill a Soul Splitter commander with one sword strike. Maybe he has the strength to fight against the Soul Splitter human monarch. Impossible. Enai Chiefing said solemnly, the Soul Breaker human king's strength is extremely terrifying. The previous clan leader was at the peak of the celestial being realm, but even he died at the hands of the Soul Breaker human king. No matter how strong Fated One is, there's no way he can fight Soulbreaker human monarch. Hearing Enai Chiefing talk about the past, the elders fell silent. They were too optimistic and overestimated Nyetian's strength. How could a martial artist at the first level of the heaven-human realm fight against the soul-splitting human monarch? The soul-searing human monarch had the strength of a heavenly emperor. Teacher, other than the dragon vein, there seems to be another even more terrifying power in the Destined One's body. At this time, Enai Zichen suddenly said, he has been fighting with the Soul Splitter for such a long time, but his origin power has decreased very slowly. It seems like his Yuan Spirit Yuan Meridian can devour origin power during battle. Enai Chiefing was stunned at first, then his eyes flickered strangely. His divine sense spread out and swept across Nyetian's body. His body could not help but tremble and shake violently. Teacher, are you okay? Enai Zichen held on to Enai Chiefing and asked nervously. I'm fine. Enai Chiefing calmed down slightly, but his heart was filled with shock. He used a special sensing method and sensed an abnormally powerful energy from Nyetian. That energy seemed to be able to devour and annihilate everything. It was terrifying to the extreme, causing even his soul to tremble. Destined One, who on earth are you? Enai Chiefing murmured to himself after calming down. His eyes were filled with great shock. At this moment, the Dragon Rebel tribe was ready. As long as Nyetian and the others retreated into the valley, the Soul Splitter would be greeted by countless soul-piercing arrows. Nyetian and the others had already helped a lot by delaying the Soul Splitter and giving the Dragon Rebel tribe time to prepare. Outside the Dragon Rebel Valley, the fierce battle was still going on. Han Tian, Xian Xiu, and Eugene were all wounded. They retreated as they fought, ready to return to the valley. Nietian was full of killing intent. He was surrounded by bloody corpses of giant wolves. It was a ghastly sight. Nietian, let's retreat. Just then, Lin Feng landed and stood back to back with Nietian. He said in a deep voice, "You retreat first. Protect Her Highness the Saintess." Nietian did not want to retreat. He was full of fighting intent. How could he retreat? Okay. Lin Feng did not insist. He answered. Then he flashed away. The black wings on his back raised a gust of wind, mincing several soul-splitter wolves into pieces. Nietian stomped on the ground. Seeing Lin Feng and the others had retreated into the valley, he felt much more relaxed. The ground was covered with corpses. Hundreds of soul-splitter men had died. Over a dozen soul-splitter commanders had also been killed. Even so, there were still thousands of soul-splitter men and 89 soul-splitter commanders. Such a force was far more powerful than that of the dragon rebel tribe. What worried Nietian the most was that the mysterious soul-splitter monarch had not shown up yet. Soul-splitter monarch, I will not return to the valley until I force you out. Nietian sneered inwardly. The crimson armor on his body became even more violent. Flames rose to a height of several feet and dyed the sky red. At this moment, several soul-splitter wolves dashed over. Countless cold lights tore the space apart and swept toward Nietian with dazzling light. Nietian wielded his sword swiftly. The sword radiance was extremely sharp. With two crisp sounds, 2 giant wolves were killed. Nietian was a sky-devouring soul. He could devour everything. As his origin power was consumed, he was also devouring origin power. Therefore, his origin power was consumed very slowly. If the Soul-Splitter Monarch did not show up, he could kill all the Soul-Splitter men. Boom, 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 boom. Suddenly, 4 giant figures appeared from different directions with strong killing intent. They were 4 soul-splitter wolves, each more than 100 feet long. They pressed toward Nietian like 4 mountains. Watch out! In the sky far away, an I Chiefeng and the others cried out in surprise. Their hearts were in their throat. Nietian's aura soared instantly. Mighty sword intent gushed out. The sharp killing intent in his eyes became even more determined. Cutting through the universe. Kill. In the void, a violent voice sounded. The sword intent around Nietian surged out like a tide and spread in all directions. Within the sword intent, lightning surged and starlight flashed. The domineering and sharp sword chi was sharp and murderous, destroying everything. Boom, boom, boom. For muffled sounds rang out. The 4 black figures were blasted away like mountains collapsing and smashed into the ground. Rumble. The ground trembled. Giant rocks were sent flying. Dust waves dozens of meters high rose from the ground, blocking out the sun. Nietian waved his sword in midair. The dust waves immediately disappeared. 4 dying wolves appeared on the ground, panting heavily. Their bodies slowly turned back into soul-splitter men. With one strike, he forced back 4 soul-splitter men commanders. Such strength was shocking. When the other soul-splitter wolves saw this, they subconsciously retreated, not daring to get close to Nietian. Soul-splitter monarch, are you still not going to show yourself? Nietian's eyes were burning. He looked down on everything and shouted arrogantly. Brat with the dragon's vein, you've angered me. In the next moment, a low voice sounded in the void. Suddenly, a huge pressure appeared, covering the sky and earth and blasting toward Nietian. Chapter 877. Heavenly Emperor Realm. These 3 words appeared in Nietian's mind. His gaze immediately trembled violently, a hint of panic surging uncontrollably in his resolute eyes. He did not expect that the soul-splitting human king was actually a heavenly Emperor Realm powerhouse. He was very certain that the other party used a kind of power of law. Power of law was a power that only heavenly Emperor Realm martial artists, who comprehended heaven and earth law, could use. Nye Tian originally thought that the soul-splitting human king should be the same as Nan, the Dragon Rebel Tribe's clan leader, only a 9th-level heaven human martial artist. Looking at it now, he underestimated the soul-splitting human king too much. 9th-level heaven human and 1st-level heavenly emperor, although there was only a difference of one realm, the chasm between them was indescribable, like heaven and earth. Power of law was a power that 9th-level heaven human martial artists were far from being able to contend with, let alone that Nye Tian only had 1st-level heaven human strength. Retreat. Feeling the powerful pressure hitting him head-on, Nye Tian only had one thought in his mind, and that was to leave immediately. Unfortunately, just as he wanted to leave, his body was enveloped by an invisible force. It was as if space became frozen, making him unable to budge an inch. *T. Nye Tian's heart trembled, cold sweat seeping out on his forehead. Brat with dragon vein, to be able to make this seat take action personally, your death is not in vain. A low and mighty voice sounded, and an even more horrifying force pressed over. Nye Tian's brows furrowed. Suddenly, he felt the space being stretched until it distorted. A terrifying force pressed toward his body, as if wanting to crush him directly. A tearing pain assaulted his entire body, making even Nye Tian's face become hideous and twisted. Heaven-shrouding totem, come out! Nye Tian felt the 9 dragon veins being completely suppressed, unable to unleash any power. In the midst of danger, he forcefully operated the domain origin formation, his entire body surging with endless power of stars. Immediately, a stretch of galaxy wrapped him up. Starlight flashed out, and a large net appeared, enveloping the entire stretch of heaven and earth. The heaven-shrouding totem forcefully opened up space, giving Nye Tian a chance to catch his breath. An astonished voice rang out in the void. Shortly after, the phantom of a wolf's head appeared, and a terrifying voice rang out, Brat, I didn't think that there would be such a strange power in your body that can resist my power of laws. Looks like I've underestimated you. You cowardly scoundrel, show yourself. Nye Tian looked at the phantom wolf head in the void and roared. Although the heaven-shrouding totem gave him a chance to breathe, it was unable to break the power of the rules around him. His body could only move slightly, but it was impossible for him to leave. Brat, you're courting death. A cold voice rang out, like a sigh from hell. Immediately after, a figure appeared from the wolf head projection. It looked like the Soul Splitter, but it was even taller than the Soul Splitter commander. It was around 5 to 6 meters tall, and its entire body was surging with a layer of dense black light, giving off an extremely suffocating pressure. Stinking brat, I'd like to see exactly what ability you have to dare to provoke me like this. With a cold sneer, the Soul Splitter Monarch's body flickered like a black bolt of lightning, leaving a black mark in the air. Boom! Crack, crack, crack! As the Soul Splitter Monarch's figure pressed down, a powerful aura arrived. The heaven-shrouding totem trembled violently and was forcefully torn apart. Nye Tian's forehead was drenched in cold sweat, but his eyes had regained their determination. They were even filled with killing intent. Brat, do you still want to kill me? The Soul Splitter Monarch sensed the killing intent in Nye Tian's eyes, but he merely sneered and directly pierced through the heaven-shrouding totem. With a flash, he was only a few dozen meters away from Nye Tian. What do you think? Nye Tian also sneered as his lips curled into a strange angle. In the next second, a ray of starlight shot out of his eyes. The starlight was blinding to the eyes, and an incomparably powerful spiritual deterrence surged out of him. It was extremely murderous. The Soul Splitter Monarch suddenly felt his soul tremble. He wanted to react, but it was too late. His eyes instantly became dull, and he lost control of his divine sense. Currently, Nye Tian's strength was already at the first stage of the heavenly evolution realm. He had awakened all the power of the stars in the second stage of the galaxy, and the eye of the galaxy could unleash abnormally terrifying power. He had deliberately provoked the Soul Splitter Monarch just now so that the latter could get close to him. Even a heavenly emperor like the Soul Splitter Monarch could not avoid being hit by it at such a close distance. Nye Tian felt the pressure on his body disappear, but his expression did not relax. His killing intent became even more intense, and several sword intents broke out of his body. Blood flew in the air, dripping with blood. What's happening? The crowd saw the Soul Splitter Monarch suddenly stop moving, and Nye Tian spurting blood all over his body. Their eyes trembled, and they did not know what had happened. Proud sword technique, weeping blood slash. The next moment, Nye Tian's solemn voice was heard, reverberating in the air. Crazy killing intent surged out, and the aura of death was strong. A blood-red sword shadow instantly formed in the air. It was extremely fast, almost tearing the space apart as it attacked the Soul Splitter Monarch. Nye Tian used all his strength in this attack. He infused his third-level sword intent, his own blood chi, and the power of the proud sword technique into it. The terrifying power was shocking. The Soul Splitter Monarch stood in the air. His mind was a mess, and he had no idea what had happened. Bang! There was a dull thud and blood splattered everywhere. The Soul Splitter Monarch's eyes suddenly came to when he was severely injured, but it was too late. He fell like a meteor and smashed into the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. The sudden turn of events caused the entire place to fall into a deathly silence. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. They could not believe that Nye Tian had sent the Soul Splitter Monarch flying with a single attack. Countless eyes focused on Nye Tian, as if they were looking at a monster. In the sky above the Dragon Rebel Valley, the elders of the Dragon Rebel tribe were collectively petrified. They only came to their senses after a long time. First Elder, I'm not dreaming, right? As Destined One actually sent the Soul Splitter Monarch flying with a single attack? Third Elder and I Chiefing rubbed his eyes desperately, still not daring to believe the scene in front of him. The other elders were also dumbfounded, their expressions dumbfounded. And I Chiefing did not return to Third Elder. Instead, he looked at Enai Zichen and asked in a trembling voice, Zichen, did you see it clearly? Yes. Enai Zichen was the calmest among everyone. He nodded solemnly and said, he used a mental attack. Enai Chiefing's gaze was dark. He still remembered that when Nye Tian saved Enai Jiaming previously, he used a mental attack. But at that time, Nye Tian's mental attack was far from being as powerful as it was now. In just a few days, Nye Tian's strength grew to a near terrifying level. This made Enai Chiefing feel astonished and shocked. The Soul Splitter Monarch is dead? Enai Jiaming looked at the ground and could not see any movement for a long time. He could not help but say in a daze. Enai Chiefing shook his head slightly. The Soul Splitter Monarch was a heavenly emperor powerhouse after all. It was impossible for him to die so easily. Chapter 878. The Soul Breaker Monarch soared into the sky. Black light radiated from his body for thousands of meters. A violent aura wreaked havoc in the space, threatening to destroy the entire place. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this. He had used his full strength in that attack just now, and it was when the Soul Breaker Monarch was completely unprepared. Even so, he still failed to kill his opponent. Instead, he completely enraged him. A heavenly emperor martial artist is indeed powerful, Nye Tian muttered to himself with a bitter smile. The Soul Breaker Monarch had used his martial physique's defense to resist Nye Tian's strongest attack. The strength of a heavenly emperor martial artist was unimaginably terrifying. Brat, I'll kill you! The Soul Breaker Monarch stood in midair, releasing a violent aura like a god of death that wanted to destroy everything. Although Nye Tian's previous attack had not killed the Soul Breaker Monarch, it had humiliated the latter greatly. The mighty Soul Breaker Monarch, the only heavenly emperor in the forbidden land of wind and cloud, had been sent flying by a first-layer heaven martial artist in front of all the Soul Breaker Monarchs. The Soulbreaker Monarch could not swallow this humiliation. If he did not kill Nyetian today, he would not be the Soulbreaker Monarch. With a furious roar, the Soulbreaker Monarch's figure moved and charged forward. The heavens and earth trembled as thousands of power of rules surged in the void. Waves of mighty force descended and spread toward Nyetian. However, Nyetian stood where he was without moving, as if he was in a complete daze. Die! The Soulbreaker Monarch's expression was vicious. He reached out with his palm, and the power of rules condensed into a dark demonic claw that wrapped around Nyetian. Boom! The Soulbreaker Monarch suddenly exerted force and clenched the dark demonic claw tightly. Nyetian's figure turned into ashes under the immense pressure. Boss! Master! Nyetian! Destined one! Countless cries of agony sounded in an instant. The crowd could not believe what they were seeing. Nyetian had died without putting up any resistance? I'm fine. At this moment, a figure returned to the sky above the Dragon Rebel Valley, and an indifferent voice resounded in the void. Everyone was taken aback and turned around abruptly. Nyetian's figure had unknowingly appeared beside them. Sword Spirit Clone. Nizichen was the first to react. Her beautiful eyes flickered and a smile suddenly appeared on her cold face. Seeing that Nyetian was still alive, she felt an indescribable joy in her heart. When she saw the scene of Nyetian being killed, she felt an indescribable sense of loss and even sorrow. Such a powerful sword intent. Nichifen also reacted and was shocked. Nyetian's sword spirit doppelganger was too lifelike. Its aura was no different from the real body. Even Nichifen and Nizichen, who had extremely high mental strength, couldn't tell the difference at first glance. Brat, you're messing with me. At this moment, the soul-splitting human king saw Nyetian in the distance. He was even more furious. He felt as if there were 10,000 maggots wriggling all over his body, making every inch of his skin extremely uncomfortable. Nyetian had insulted him twice. If he didn't get his revenge, the soul-splitting human king would feel as if there was a fishbone stuck in his throat. Soul-splitting human king. Nyetian looked at the soul-splitting human king from afar. There was a hint of worry in his eyes. His attack just now couldn't even kill the soul-splitting human king in his normal state. If the latter transformed into a soul-splitting wolf, his strength would be unimaginable. Chief Elder, you're ready, right? Nyetian asked Nichifen seriously, looking at him. Yes. Nichifen nodded slightly and said, Don't worry, Mr. Nyetian. The warriors of the Dragon Rebel tribe are ready. The chief will come out soon. As long as the soul-splitting human king dares to attack us, we'll kill them all. Nyetian nodded slightly, but he felt strange. From Nichifen's tone, it sounded as if Nan and I would be able to fight the soul-splitting human king after he came out. Nan and I was only in the 9th tier of the Heaven Realm, and he was restrained by the soul-splitting human king. It was impossible for him to compete with the soul-splitting human king. Everyone, listen up. Charge into the Dragon Rebel Valley. I'm going to wipe out the Dragon Rebel tribe. The soul-splitting human king's black light surged like flames. He let out a deep roar, and his blood-red eyes flickered with a terrifying killing intent. Howl! The next moment, the soul-splitting human king on the ground almost went berserk. Wolf howls rose and fell. Countless soul-splitting human kings turned into soul-splitting wolves and charged toward the Dragon Rebel Valley. Rumble! The ground gave off a violent noise and the earth started to shake. The soul-splitting wolves' momentum was overwhelming. The terrifying soul-splitting chi linked together, like moving black clouds covering the sky and covering the earth. What a terrifying momentum! Nyetian's eyes couldn't help but tremble. Thousands of soul-splitting wolves, each dozens of meters long, were charging at the same time. The momentum alone was enough to shock people. Nichifen and the others were also a little shocked, but they still kept their composure. Everyone knew that today was a life-and-death battle between the Dragon Rebel tribe and the soul-splitting human king. After this battle, only one of them could survive. The soul-splitting wolf army surged over like a tide. They were a dark mass, and it was very frightening. Chief Elder. The other elders looked toward Enai Chiefeng, waiting for his order. Enai Chiefeng's eyes were like torches, and they were so calm that it was frightening. He was still waiting for the best time. Several seconds later, the soul-splitting wolves had charged into the valley. The houses were destroyed in an instant, and everything was trampled to pieces. Fortunately, the Dragon Rebel tribe had retreated. Shoot! Just at this moment, Enai Chiefeng shouted angrily. Swish, swish, swish. As soon as he finished speaking, countless soul-piercing arrows appeared like a storm, covering half of the sky and turning it crimson. Bang, bang, bang. Horrible muffled sounds came, and the ground turned into a sea of fire. The soul-piercing arrows were so penetrative that even the soul-splitting human king couldn't resist them. Besides, the flames on the arrows were extremely powerful. Countless soul-splitting wolves were set on fire, screaming miserably. The soul-splitting wolves trampled on each other. In the blink of an eye, there were countless casualties. Seeing this, Enai Chiefeng and the others nodded slightly, then looked toward Nye Tian gratefully. Fortunately, Nye Tian had reminded them not to waste the soul-piercing arrows on the soul-splitting wolves. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to fight against so many soul-splitting human kings. Bastard! 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 The soul-splitting human king was in the sky. Seeing the scene in the valley, he was heartbroken. He was completely driven mad. The black light around him suddenly became violent, and his body suddenly expanded. Oh no! Nye Tian had been paying attention to the soul-splitting human king. Seeing this, his heart couldn't help but tremble. The soul-splitting human king was going to transform. The soul-splitting human king could transform into a soul-splitting wolf that was hundreds of meters long. He wondered how terrifying the soul-splitting human king's soul-splitting wolf body would be. At this moment, Enai Chiefeng and the others also fixed their eyes on the soul-splitting human king. Under countless gazes, the soul-splitting human king's body kept expanding. The black soul-splitting power filled the whole place. Chapter 879. Seeing the soul-splitting king's transformation, everyone was stunned. Their expressions became stiff, and they were shocked beyond words. Although Nye Tian had been prepared, he was still shocked beyond words when he saw a 500-meter-long soul-splitting wolf appear. He had thought the soul-splitting king was only about 300 meters long at most, but he had underestimated it. Dragon Rebel Clan, today will be the day of your destruction. The soul-splitting king roared angrily. Soul-splitting chi soared into the sky and spread thousands of meters away. The surrounding space was filled with a bloody and violent aura, making it difficult for people to breathe. Seeing the soul-splitting king's aura, everyone was stunned. They couldn't help but show fear in their eyes. Retreat. Nye Tian made a decision immediately and said in a low voice. The soul-splitting king was too powerful. He couldn't rival it at all. Even if Nye Tian used all his trump cards, he wouldn't be able to compete with it. He was too weak. The gap of one big realm couldn't be made up by talent and martial arts technique. Leader, are you not ready yet? Enai Chiefeng calmed down a little, but he looked into the distance, as if he was waiting for something. Nye Tian was stunned again. Enai Nan still hadn't shown up. Did he really have the strength to fight against the soul-splitting king? Ants, go to hell. The next moment, the soul-splitting king's huge body moved and pressed down on Nye Tian and the others. It was like a moving black mountain, and its surging momentum froze the space directly. Oh no! Nye Tian felt his body was restricted, and he had a bad feeling. If the soul-splitting king pressed down directly, everyone would die on the spot. Boom! At this moment, another huge force appeared. It was mighty but gentle, like a spring breeze and rain, and it tore the frozen space apart. First Elder, you go first. Then, a familiar voice rang out and a figure appeared. It was the leader of the Dragon Rebel clan and Nan. Tian felt the space was restored. He moved and retreated thousands of meters away. The others also retreated and stood behind Tian. Tian steadied his body and looked at Nan and I. When he sensed the latter's aura, his expression changed. Nan and I had also broken through to the Heavenly Emperor realm. Furthermore, it seemed to be second-level Heavenly Emperor strength, even stronger than the soul-splitting human monarch. How is this possible? Tian was dumbfounded. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Nan Ni's strength was clearly only at the 9th level of Heaven being. Even if he consumed the Tier 9 explosive yuan pill, he might not be able to raise his strength to the 2nd level of Heavenly Emperor. What had happened to his body for his strength to skyrocket in an instant? Tian looked at Ai Chifeng. The latter obviously knew the truth, but was intentionally avoiding his gaze. Of course, Tian understood that Ai Chifeng didn't want to tell him the truth, and he couldn't ask directly. After all, it was the Dragon Rebel tribe's business. However, since Nan Ni's strength rose to the 2nd level Heavenly Emperor realm, it was sufficient to fight the soul-splitter human monarch. The battle between two Heavenly Emperor realm martial artists was bound to be earth-shaking. In the void, the two great celestial emperors stood shoulder to shoulder. "You're the new clan leader of the Dragon Rebel tribe?" The soul-splitter human monarch's blood-colored eyes stared at Nan and I as he spoke in a deep voice. "Yes." Nan and I nodded slightly. The aura around his body skyrocketed. "Do you know that the previous clan leader of the Dragon Rebel tribe died in my hands?" The soul-splitter human monarch spoke coldly. His gaze was cold, and his killing intent was revealed. He said, "You will also die in my hands." "Is that so?" Nan Ni's expression suddenly turned cold. Because the previous clan leader was his father. The person in front of him was the enemy who killed his father. As his chilly voice faded, Nan Ni's entire body released an enormous aura. It was actually an aura that was completely different from the Dragon Rebel aura. Die. The soul-splitter human monarch didn't waste any more words. With a furious roar, his enormous body moved instantly, leaving a black mark in the air. Swoosh. In the void, a huge cold light of 100 meters appeared. The entire space trembled, setting off a formless air wave. Tian and the others were thousands of meters away, but they still felt the enormous pressure and were forced to retreat. The cold light whizzed out with the power to tear heaven and earth apart, attacking Nan and I. "Father, watch out!" Ai Zichun and Ai Jiaming exclaimed at the same time. Their voices were very sharp. Nan Ni's eyes were gloomy. He struck out with his palm. Huge waves surged, and a horrifying handprint appeared in the air. Boom! This was the first time the two Heaven Emperors had confronted each other head-on. The two forces collided with a loud bang. The power of rules devoured each other, and the space was directly torn apart. The crack in the space was like a bottomless abyss. As soon as it appeared, it quickly healed under the effect of the rules of space. Boom! The next moment, a tyrannical air wave erupted from the center of the collision. It was visible to the naked eye, and it spread in all directions. Everyone felt their hearts sink. Many people couldn't bear it and directly spat out blood. Jean de Bao and the others were weaker. Their faces were as pale as paper, and blood flowed from the corners of their mouth. "You guys leave first." Tian glanced at Jean de Bao and the others and asked them to leave first. The two Heaven Emperors had just started fighting. If they continued fighting, it would be even more tragic. Jean de Bao and the others couldn't bear such power at all. Tian and the others also retreated again, their figures frozen in the air. At the same time, in the valley, the tragic battle was still going on. The soul-splitting wolves suffered heavy casualties. More than half of them were dead or injured, but there were still more. The Dragon Rebel clan didn't have any soul-piercing arrows anymore, so they could only fight directly. There were only a few hundred people in the Dragon Rebel clan, and most of them were below the celestial being realm. They couldn't resist the army of soul-splitting wolves at all. Han Tian, you guys go down and help, Nie Tian said to Han Tian and the others behind him when he saw the scene in the valley. Han Tian agreed, and his figure directly rushed down. You guys go down too. And I Chiefing turned around and said to the dozen elders behind him. At this point, even the elders had to fight in person. The dozen elders of the Dragon Rebel clan were quite strong, all around the 5th tier of the celestial being realm. They should be able to resist the soul-splitting wolves. In the sky, only Nie Tian and An I Chiefing were still watching the battle. Nie Tian knew that the battle between Nan and I and the soul-splitting king was the one that would decide life and death. In the air, the two figures faced each other. From the head-on clash just now, it was obvious that Nan Nie's battle prowess was still a little weaker. Even though he was a 2nd-tier Heaven Emperor, he was restrained by the soul-splitting king. He couldn't unleash the true power of the Dragon Rebel aura, so he could only rely on another force to fight. Nie Tian looked at Nan and I and frowned slightly. He could sense that the latter had a power that was completely different from the Dragon Rebel aura. It was this power that allowed him to advance to the 2nd tier of the Heaven Emperor realm. What kind of power is this? It seems to be a little similar to the aura of the Qilin's precious blood. Nie Tian felt strange and frowned slightly. Leader of the Dragon Rebel clan, the soul-splitting man is the nemesis of the Dragon Rebel clan. You can't defeat me. At this moment, the soul-splitting king's arrogant voice rang out, and the soul-splitting aura all over his body skyrocketed again. Chapter 880. The soul-splitting king's imposing manner was vast and powerful, like a mountain or a sea. Like a mass of dark clouds, it rushed toward Nan and I. The extremely powerful momentum spread out. The space within 10,000 meters froze instantly, shrouded in darkness. Watch out! An I Chiefing's heart suddenly tightened. He couldn't help but scream. His eyes were filled with worry. If Nan and I lost, he wouldn't be the only one who would die, but the entire Dragon Rebel tribe would. In the void, Nan Nie's figure was as still as a mountain. However, the aura around him kept soaring, tearing the frozen space inch by inch. The next moment, a giant dark green beast appeared behind Nan and I. It was 500 or 600 meters tall, like a mountain. It was even bigger than the soul-splitting wolf. Giant spirit real body. Seeing this, Nie Tian's eyes darkened slightly. To fight against the soul-splitting king, Nan and I used the giant spirit real body. The giant spirit real body of a warrior in the Heaven Emperor realm had the potential in all aspects to the extreme. It could exert the power of the original spirit to the fullest. Clan leader Nie's original spirit is at least at the 8th rank. In this way, it's enough for him to fight with the soul-splitting wolf. Nie Tian murmured. His eyes were shining with blazing divine light. Clan leader, the survival of the Dragon Rebel tribe depends on you. An I Chiefing was also extremely nervous. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Giant spirit real body? In the void, the soul-splitting king's violent voice rang out. He roared madly, "I'll kill you!" As soon as he roared, the soul-splitting wolf dashed over. Its violent momentum was extremely terrifying. Its sharp claws drew a cold light in the air, attacking the giant dark green beast. The giant dark green beast was provoked. It didn't dodge, but also dashed over. The 9-clawed Kylan was Nan Nie's original spirit. It was the original spirit of a 9th-rank supreme martial artist. When the giant spirit real body was revealed, it could fight head-on with a 9th-rank spirit beast. Boom! There was a series of explosions in the void, making people tremble. The violent power was wreaking havoc in the space. The whole world seemed like it would collapse at any time. Retreat. When Nie Tian saw that the two giant beasts were about to collide, the corner of his mouth twitched, and he immediately retreated. Against Wind also retreated. Both of them knew that the destructive power of a head-on collision of this degree was immeasurable. High up in the sky, two huge beasts, one black and one green, charged at each other at the fastest speed like two mountains. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the two giant beasts collided with each other. The void shook violently, and a shock wave visible to the naked eye spread out from the center of the collision, bombarding in all directions. Boom! Rumble! Rumble! The mountains within a radius of tens of thousands of meters were all cut off, as if a huge steel knife had been chopped down. The surrounding trees were all destroyed by the violent force, and the dust on the ground rose into the sky. At the center of the collision, dazzling rays of light continuously gushed out, and the two gigantic beasts were drowned in the endless brilliance. This was a battle of strength against strength, a battle of flesh against flesh. It was extremely tragic and bloody. Nye Tian was tens of thousands of meters away, his expression cold. He couldn't see clearly what was happening in the distance, and could only sense the two auras. His face slowly became gloomy. He gradually sensed that the soul-splitting chi was becoming more and more intense, and soon it had the absolute upper hand, steadily suppressing the other aura. Patriarch! Against Wind also sensed something, and his expression became horrified as he shouted in pain. The battle on the ground suddenly stopped, and countless eyes looked up at the sky, waiting for the two figures to appear. After a long time, the dazzling brilliance gradually weakened, and the two huge figures slowly became clear, slowly distancing themselves from each other. The soul-splitting wolf stood in the air, the black brilliance constantly flowing around its body, and its aura was still strong, without the slightest weakening. On the other hand, the nine-clawed Qilin's huge body was dripping with blood, and there was not a single intact skin on its body. There were several tens of meters long wounds, and blood kept spurting out, and even the cold white bones could be seen. This scene was too bloody, and it was a great visual impact. Patriarch! Seeing the scene in the air, the people of the Dragon Rebel clan all wailed in grief. Undoubtedly, Nan and I had been defeated in a head-on battle with the soul-splitting king, and he had been utterly defeated. Ancestors of the Dragon Rebel clan! Standing on the nine-clawed Qilin, Nan Ni's body shook a little, and he almost fell. He said in an extremely sorrowful voice, "Nan and I is useless. I can't protect my clansmen." Patriarch! Hearing Nan Ni's sorrowful voice, the people of the Dragon Rebel clan were even more sorrowful. Their eyes were bloodshot, but there was nothing they could do. The Dragon Rebel Valley had been occupied by the soul-splitting wolf army, and Nan and I had been defeated. The Dragon Rebel clan was walking step by step toward the abyss of death. Patriarch of the Dragon Rebel clan! Seeing Nan and I admit defeat, the soul-splitting king laughed wildly and shouted, "I told you that the last patriarch died in my hands, and you will be no exception. Prepare to die." The wild voice was like sharp awls stabbing Nan Ni's heart. He hadn't avenged his father, and he couldn't protect his clansmen. He was really useless as a patriarch. Patriarch Nan and I. Just as Nan and I was about to lose all hope and become disheartened, a fierce and unyielding voice rang out, "It's normal for a real man to meet enemies stronger than him. But as a warrior, you can fail, but you can never admit defeat. As the patriarch of the Dragon Rebel clan, you shoulder the fate of the entire clan. Your life is not only your own, but also the lives of all the clansmen of the Dragon Rebel clan. If you admit defeat, your clansmen will become lambs waiting to be slaughtered. If you do this, how can you face the Dragon Rebel clan? How can you face the pretentious demon saint?" The fierce and fearless voice fell. Every word was like a gem, and every sentence was sonorous. His unyielding will influenced everyone present. Everyone's eyes suddenly became resolute, and there was a terrible murderous intent in their eyes. Warriors could lose, but they could never admit defeat. It wasn't terrible to lose 10,000 times, but it was terrible to admit defeat. Once a warrior admitted defeat, his heart of martial arts would be clouded, and it would be difficult for him to make any further progress in his martial arts journey. You're right. All of a sudden, Nan Ni's body shook violently. The dejection in his eyes disappeared, and he released fierce momentum again. He said loudly, Mr. Nyetian, thank you for reminding me in time. I was confused and almost made a big mistake. As he spoke, Nan and I looked down and said in a mighty voice, Listen up, people of the Dragon Rebel Clan. Our Dragon Rebel Clan only has warriors who will be beheaded, not cowards who will kneel. Today, even if the Dragon Rebel Clan has to fight to the last man, we will never admit defeat. Never admit defeat. Never admit defeat. Never admit defeat. For a moment, the morale was high, and the unrestrained voice resounded through the entire Dragon Rebel Valley. Chapter 881. The soul-splitting king's body trembled with rage. He stared at Nan and I sternly and said, Dragon Rebel Clan leader, I'll let you watch all the Dragon Rebel tribe die tragically today. Everyone, listen to my command. Kill all the Dragon Rebel tribe members. Leave no one alive. The soul-splitting king growled in a deep voice. His eyes were bloodshot and terrifying. Howl, howl, howl. The soul-splitting wolf went berserk. He charged forward even more ferociously and bathed the Dragon Rebel Valley in blood. Seeing his clansmen being brutally killed, Nan Ni's heart ached. He moved and wanted to charge forward. Just then, a figure suddenly appeared in his mind. It was Nyetian's voice. Clan leader and I, don't fight the soul-splitting king recklessly. Stall him first. Nyetian's voice was deep and frighteningly calm. Nan and I was stunned. He didn't know what Nyetian wanted to do, but he chose to trust Nyetian instinctively. Nyetian nodded slightly and then sent a voice transmission to an Chiefing, saying, Chief Elder, please come with me. An Chiefing's eyes flashed. Although he didn't understand, he still left with Nyetian. The two disappeared, but no one paid attention to them. Nyetian and an Chiefing soon arrived at the hall. The smell of blood kept drifting over from the valley, filling the entire hall with the smell of blood. Mr. Nyetian, you. It was the most crucial moment. An Chiefing didn't know what Nyetian wanted to do, so he asked nervously. Grand Elder, the matter is urgent, so I'll speak frankly. I want to know exactly what Lord Nan and I consumed to allow his strength to advance to the second level of the Heavenly Emperor realm in such a short time? Nyetian had a solemn expression as he said indifferently. This. An Chiefing was stunned at first, then he actually hesitated. Nyetian's eyes narrowed. Even at this point, an Chiefing still wasn't willing to tell him. Nyetian said directly, Chief Elder, you've seen the situation outside. Lord Nan and I can't possibly be a match for the soul-splitting king. If he loses, the entire Dragon Rebel tribe will be destroyed. I'll talk. Without waiting for Nyetian to finish speaking, an Chiefing interrupted him and said, Patriarch consumed the Chilin's tear. Chilin's tear? Nyetian was slightly taken aback. Speak clearly. This is the fruit of the Chilin's precious blood, an Chiefing said in a deep voice. The Chilin's precious blood blooms every 3,000 years, bears fruit every 3,000 years, and matures every 3,000 years. Every time it matures, it can produce 3 to 4 Chilin tears. The Chilin's tear is something even more terrifying than a level 9 spirit herb. After a cultivator consumes it, their strength will increase greatly. However, at the same time, it will also bring about serious consequences. What consequences? Nyetian was taken aback and asked. The power of the Chilin's tear cannot be maintained for a long time. It can only be maintained for a day at most. It is very similar to the explosive Yuan pill, blood death pill, and other spirit pills, but the consequences are more serious. An Chiefing's eyes kept trembling. He continued to say, after taking the Chilin's tear, the cultivator will be weak for half a year or even a year. During this time, the cultivator can't absorb the spiritual power of heaven and earth, so his strength won't increase at all. Once the weak period is over, the cultivator's talent will be affected. There will be different degrees of decline, depending on the cultivator's constitution. Some cultivators even died during the week period after taking the Chilence tear. The Chilence tear is forbidden. No one has been allowed to take it for a long time. This time, if the situation wasn't critical, the patriarch wouldn't have taken the Chilence tear. I see. Nye Tion's eyes trembled violently. No wonder he felt the energy in Anai Nan's body was very similar to the Chilence precious blood. It turned out that it was the fruit of the Chilence precious blood. After thinking for a while, Nye Tion's face suddenly darkened. He asked, "Do you still have the Chilence tear?" "Mr. Nye Tion, you." Anai Chifeng suddenly thought of something. His face stiffened and he said in panic, "Mr. Nye, you have the dragon vein. The Chilence tear contains the most violent reverse dragon power, which conflicts with the dragon vein in your body. If you take the Chilence tear, you will definitely die." Anai Chifeng was right. When Nye Tion was on the Chilence precious blood, he almost died together with the Chilence precious blood. If he took the Chilence tear, it would be very difficult for him to bear the violent reverse dragon power. "Great Elder, I know what I'm doing." Nye Tion nodded slightly. His eyes were firm and blazing. He said, "The dragon vein in my body has a great restraining power against the Soul Splitter King. As long as my strength can reach the fifth heaven realm, I have the confidence to fight against the Soul Splitter King. This is the only way. I have to try." "This." Anai Chifeng's eyes trembled. He stared at Nye Tion in disbelief and said, "Mr. Nye, do you know that even if you can bear the power of the Chilence tear, you may not be able to kill the Soul Splitter King? Even if you can kill the Soul Splitter King, it will be very difficult for you to get through the period of weakness brought by the Chilence tear. In the worst-case scenario, even if you survive, your talent will definitely be affected. Have you thought about all these?" For Nye Tion, the Chilence tear was too risky. Anai Chifeng had to remind him. "I understand." Nye Tion nodded heavily. He had thought it through very clearly. Instead of waiting for death, it was better to fight to the death. He believed that the star power could suppress the reverse dragon power and be used by him. "There's no time. Lord Nan and I can't hold on for long." Seeing that Anai Chifeng was still hesitating, Nye Tion urged. "Okay." Anai Chifeng gritted his teeth and nodded. He said emotionally, "Mr. Nye, on behalf of the Dragon Rebel Tribe, I thank you for doing so much for the Dragon Rebel Tribe." After that, Anai Chifeng flashed into the inner hall. "It's too early to say thank you." Nye Tion looked serious. There was no fear in his eyes. Instead, he was a little excited. The Chilence tear could increase Nan Ni's strength by 3 levels. He was looking forward to it. Nye Tion firmly believed that the star power of 210 billion awakened in his body was enough to suppress the reverse dragon power. After a while, Anai Chifeng showed up again with a red fruit in his hand. It was as big as a fist and as red as fire, releasing an extremely violent energy. Chilence tear. Nye Tion took the red fruit. His eyes were shining with enthusiasm. "Chief Elder, I'll take the Chilence tear here. Please protect me and don't let anyone get close to me." Nye Tion nodded seriously and sat down with his legs crossed. A ball of flame gushed out from his hand. He refined the Chilence tear a little bit and swallowed it directly. The next second, the reverse dragon power of the Chilence tear burst out like a storm, attacking all the meridians in Nye Tion's limbs. Ah! Nye Tion didn't expect the Chilence tear to be so powerful. He couldn't help but scream because of the sudden pain that spread all over his body. At this moment, Nye Tion felt as if all his flesh and blood were about to be torn apart. The great pain twisted his face. Chapter 882. While Nye Tion was taking the Chilence tear, in the Dragon Rebel Valley, whales were everywhere and blood flowed like a river. It was a bloody scene as far as the eye could see. The warriors of the Dragon Rebel Tribe were fighting to the death, but they were too few in number and too weak to stop the soul-splitting wolves. More than half of the dozen patriarchs were dead or injured. Only a few were still able to fight. Han Tian and the others were still holding on, but they were badly injured. Retreat! Second Patriarch and Ichiu yelled and retreated. The remaining dozens of people of the dragon rebel tribe retreated slowly, but the soul-splitting wolves were attacking even more fiercely. You guys retreat first. I'll bring up the rear. Seeing his clansmen being slaughtered, Aichile's eyes turned red. He roared and charged forward. Third brother, come back! Aichiu yelled in pain. He knew that Aichile would die for sure after he charged forward, but he had no choice but to keep retreating. Otherwise, the casualties would be even greater. Han Tian, let's retreat. Seeing the dragon rebel tribe retreat to the lobby, Lin Feng shouted at Han Tian in the distance, his eyes flickering. I'm not retreating! Han Tian roared. His fighting spirit was wild, and he had no intention of retreating. Even if he had to die, he would kill all the soul-splitting wolves. Seeing that Han Tian wasn't willing to retreat, Lin Feng's eyes trembled. He turned around and said to Eugene and Xianqiu, "You guys go back to the lobby first. We'll go back together." Eugene was stubborn and wouldn't listen to Lin Feng. If Eugene didn't leave, Xianqiu wouldn't be able to either. Okay. Lin Feng's eyes were burning with passion as he said, "Then let's fight to the death." After that, he dashed into the army of soul-splitting wolves. His terrifying black wings stirred up endless gales, but they couldn't shake the soul-splitting wolves. Han Tian turned into a celestial stone beast and fought hand-to-hand with countless soul-splitting wolves. Aichiu and the others retreated to the lobby, but they saw Aichifeng and Nie Tian. Aichifeng's eyes were sharp, while Nie Tian was sitting there with an extremely painful expression on his face. "Why are you retreating?" Seeing Aichiu and the others retreat, Aichifeng roared. "Great Elder, we can't hold on any longer." Aichiu was stunned for a moment. He sensed that the aura in Nie Tian's body wasn't right. He immediately understood something, and his voice started to tremble. "Mr. Nie needs time. All of you must hold on. Don't let the soul-splitting wolves charge into the hall." Opposing Wind didn't bother to explain anything. Instead, he roared madly. "Yes, yes." Aichiu's voice trembled. He looked deeply at Nie Tian and roared, "Everyone, listen to my orders. Guard the entrance of the hall. Do not allow the split soul wolves to take even half a step inside." "Yes." The remaining dozens of warriors of the Dragon Rebel clan answered at the same time. They all understood what had happened to Nie Tian. Nie Tian was an outsider and a fated one, but he dared to take the Kylan's tear for the sake of the Dragon Rebel clan. As members of the Dragon Rebel clan, if they were weak or afraid of death, they would be worse than animals. All of them had only one thought in their minds: they had to buy time for Nie Tian. They couldn't let the split soul wolves charge into the hall. In the hall, Nie Tian's face was twisted. His whole body was in great pain, and he was soaked in sweat. Inside his body, the endless reverse power of dragon was swallowed by the power of stars. Gradually, it was transformed into original power, which was absorbed by the 9 dragon veins. The endless power hit the original meridians, and his aura skyrocketed. The second level of the celestial being realm. The third level of the celestial being realm. The fourth level of the celestial being realm. As his strength skyrocketed, Nie Tian's aura grew stronger and stronger. The seventh level of the celestial being realm. Opposing Wind kept sensing the change in Nie Tian's strength. His shock was written all over his face. Even if a member of the Dragon Rebel clan took the Kylan's tear, his strength wouldn't increase so much. Nie Tian's absorption of the reverse power of dragon was even more effective than that of a member of the Dragon Rebel clan. How is this possible? Opposing Wind was shocked. Nie Tian was the destined one, a man with the innate dragon veins. However, he didn't know that Nie Tian had not only the dragon veins, but also the power of stars. The 9 galaxies was a power even more powerful than the dragon veins. Without the support of the power of stars, Nyetian wouldn't have taken the Kylan's tear rashly. Just as Nyetian's strength continued to skyrocket, mournful wolf howls rang out incessantly from outside the hall. Even though the members of the dragon rebel clan fought back with all their might, they couldn't defend against the fierce attacks of the split soul wolves. There were too many split soul wolves. The members of the dragon rebel clan were weak, and they were outnumbered. It was impossible for them to resist. Oh no! Seeing that Nyetian hadn't absorbed all of the reverse power of dragon, but the split soul wolves were already outside the hall, opposing Wind's heart sank. His figure flashed, and he joined the fight himself. As the chief elder of the dragon rebel clan, opposing Wind was in Tier 8 of the celestial being realm. With a palm strike, a mighty palm power surged and sent a split soul wolf flying. But in the next moment, even more soul-splitting wolves came over and surrounded against Wind. At the same time, Han Tian, Lin Feng, and the others had retreated to the outside of the hall. Seeing Nyetian sitting there with his legs crossed and his aura skyrocketing, they realized what was going on. Han Tian, don't let these split soul wolves get close to Nyetian, Lin Feng shouted. The wings on his back turned into 2 sharp claws, tearing a split soul wolf 30 to 40 meters long into pieces. Okay. Han Tian nodded heavily. His tall body blocked the entrance of the hall, blocking the dozens of split soul wolves with his flesh and blood. Han Tian knew very well that if he wanted to get close to Nyetian, he would have to step over his dead body first. Boom! The unyielding opposing wind's aura soared into the sky, scattering the dozens of split soul wolves. However, at that moment, the second elder Nichiu was hit by a split soul wolf, and his body was cut in half. Second brother! When Nichiu saw this, all the blood in his body surged. With a furious roar, he charged at the soul-splitting wolf. You're courting death. The split soul wolf was 100 meters long and was not afraid of opposing wind at all. It let out an indistinct human voice and charged straight at them. Bang! Opposing wind threw a palm strike. The huge palm's shadow was extremely sharp, and the space shook as it bombarded the split soul wolf. However, the split soul wolf did not dodge. It swung its huge claws, and a dazzling cold light flashed through the space. With a crisp sound, a horrifying wound appeared on Nichiu's body, and he was sent flying backward. Chief Elder! Teacher! Seeing this, Jiaming and Zichen shouted at the same time. They flashed over and protected opposing wind. Bang bang bang! On the other side, countless muffled sounds could be heard. The sky stone beast's huge body finally could not withstand the huge impact and fell to the ground, causing the entire hall to tremble. The moment it fell, the sky stone beast disappeared, and a bloody figure appeared. It was Han Tian, who fell to the ground and fainted. Chapter 883. The soul-splitting wolf jumped up high and attacked Han Tian with its extremely sharp claws. If the claws landed, Han Tian would definitely die on the spot. Han Tian! At the moment of life and death, a voice rang out. Then a black force appeaed. Like a tentacle, it rolled up Han Tian and pulled him over. Lin Feng. Han Tian opened his eyes. Seeing Lin Feng's face, he called him weakly and passed out again. Xianqiu, take him and leave. Lin Feng handed Han Tian over to Xianqiu and said seriously. Then he looked at Nyetian, whose momentum was still soaring. Xianqiu answered and left with Han Tian. Idiot Nyetian, wake up! Eugene looked at Nyetian and scolded him in a sweet voice. But tears were welling up in her eyes, and her voice was sobbing. After all, she was just a teenage girl. The tragedy in front of her was something she had never imagined before. Your Highness, please leave. Lin Feng looked at Eugene. His eyes were still calm like a cold lake without any ripples. I won't go. Eugene was very stubborn. She shouted in a sweet voice, but her tears fell down. Standing in front of Eugene, Lin Feng glanced around. almost all the members of the Dragon Rebel clan had been killed or injured. Only a dozen of them were barely standing, and only a few of them were still capable of fighting. Howl! 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 Right at this moment, countless wolves howled and rushed towards Lin Feng and the others. Kill! There was no fear in Lin Feng's eyes. He shouted coldly, and the black wings on his back turned into a black long sword. As he thrust the sword out, the black light of the sword spread out for hundreds of feet, looking extremely fierce. Eugene was struck dumb. She had never known Lin Feng could use a sword. Puff! The sword will was sharp. The sword pierced through a soul-splitting wolf and died on the spot. However, Lin Feng was only one person. He couldn't fend off the attacks of all the soul-splitting wolves. Countless huge black wolves dashed out. The hall was on the verge of collapse. All of the soul-splitting wolves pounced towards Nie Tian. Countless rays of cold light appeared, and the chill in the air caused people to tremble. Be careful! Lin Feng shouted when he saw this scene. He wanted to act, but it was too late. The extremely sharp cold light mercilessly shot towards Nie Tian. Any one of them was enough to kill him on the spot. At the moment of life and death, Nie Tian's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. Boom! In the next moment, boundless sword will suddenly gushed out of his body. It was extremely terrifying, and 1,000-meter-long sword light bloomed in the void, filling the entire hall. Bang, bang, bang! With countless muffled sounds, more than a dozen soul-splitting wolves were directly blown away. Before their huge bodies landed on the ground, they were directly torn apart by the powerful sword intent and turned into a pool of blood in the air. What? Everyone was shocked by what they saw. They even forgot about the danger around them. Nie Tian only used the sword intent in his body to easily kill more than a dozen soul-splitting wolves. This was too terrifying. Nie Tian stood up, and his whole body was surging with a terrifying sword intent. His whole body was like a sharp sword, a killing sword that could destroy everything. The 9th level of the Heaven Realm. Ni Zichen sensed the aura of Nie Tian. Her beautiful eyes suddenly widened, and she broke out in a cold sweat. She knew that Nie Tian had taken the Qilin tier, but she didn't expect that his strength could be raised to the 9th level of the Heaven Realm. Nie Tian absorbed more power from the Qilin tier than Nan and I did. Lin Feng, you can leave now. Leave the rest to me. Nie Tian's figure flashed. His voice was very calm, but it revealed a terrifying killing intent. Nie Tian looked at Lin Feng with a strange look in his eyes. He had seen what had happened just now. The calmness that Lin Feng displayed was far beyond that of ordinary youths. His black wings, as well as the black longsword formed by the wings, were very strange. It seemed that Lin Feng's identity was not simple. He was definitely not just an ordinary follower of the heavenly demon cult. Lin Feng nodded slightly. He looked back at Eugene, and the two of them left together. Eugene looked at Nie Tian dumbfoundedly, and had not recovered from the shock. Ni Jiaming, you guys leave too. Nie Tian looked at Ni Jiaming on the other side and said calmly. Ni Jiaming and Ni Zichen retreated with the injured Ni Qifeng. The soul-splitting wolves around them were stunned and did not dare to come forward. When everyone had left, Nie Tian's figure slowly walked out of the hall. All the soul-splitting wolves stared at him with their blood-red eyes, and their cold, killing intent was extremely violent. The 9th level of the Heaven Realm is still a little lacking. The absolute Heaven Slash appeared in Nie Tian's hand, and he activated the Sword of God Wheel. Vaguely, 1,000-meter sword shadow appeared in the air, as if it was going to tear everything apart. The 9th level of the Heaven Realm was only one step away from the Celestial Emperor Realm. This strength was not strong, but for the current Nie Tian it was enough. Awo! At this time, a strange cry sounded, and 100-meter soul-splitting wolf pounced over ferociously. Several beams of cold light in the air attacked Nie Tian. However, Nie Tian did not even look at it. His body shook slightly, and a sword will whistled out, directly piercing the body of the soul-splitting wolf. An extremely tragic howl sounded, and after the soul-splitting wolf fell to the ground, it twitched a few times and died on the spot. When the other soul-splitting wolves saw this, there was an additional trace of fear in their fierce eyes, and many of them actually began to retreat subconsciously. Still want to run now? Tion's gaze swept across the valley. The sight of the bloody corpses caused his blood to surge, and the killing intent in his eyes grew even stronger. All of you, stay here. Suddenly, Tion roared, and his figure shot up into the sky, the long sword in his hand slashing down directly. The sword slashes everywhere. Boundless sword will surged out, rushing in all directions like a raging tide, and the world was filled with the powerful sword will. The mighty power of thunder surged in the air, creating hundreds of meters of purple-gold lightning, and the starlight also became dazzling in an instant. Rumble! A loud explosion sounded, and a terrifying sword will bloomed in the space. Waves of destructive power spread out, rushing towards the soul-splitting wolves like a gale sweeping away fallen leaves. The sword will raged in the space, and the extremely terrifying killing intent surged, annihilating and crushing everything in its path. Whoa! Countless shrill cries sounded, and the soul-splitting wolves were immediately turned into a bloody mess in the wave of sword will. Those soul-splitting wolves could not withstand the pressure of the sword will, and were actually torn apart and crushed, becoming a mass of blood, submerged in the sword will. In an instant, the smell of blood in the valley was extremely thick, and the whole world became blood-red, making people's hearts tremble. One sword, just one sword. Tion directly killed hundreds of soul-splitting wolves, and all the attacks were completely neutralized. The other soul-splitting wolves were like stray dogs, not daring to take even half a step closer to the valley, and fled in panic. Chapter 884. In the void, the soul-splitting king and Nan and I were still fighting. Although Nan and I had been avoiding the soul-splitting king, he was still badly injured. The nine-clawed Kylan was badly mutilated and was on the verge of collapse. Nan and I was fighting with his last breath. He knew he couldn't fall. Once he did, the dragon rebel tribe would be doomed. While they were fighting fiercely, what was happening on the ground made them pause. Bastard! The soul-splitting king couldn't stand the fact that Tion had killed hundreds of soul-splitting wolves with one stroke and scared away the other soul-splitting wolves. He roared madly. The next moment, Tion dashed toward him and said cold, "Soul-splitting king, you'll die if you call me bastard." Tion's figure stood straight like a long sword, looking incomparably fierce. "Mr. Nye, you..." Nan and I suddenly realized that Tion had advanced to the 9th level of the celestial being realm. He was so shocked that he couldn't say anything for a while. "Just like you, I ate something," Tion said calmly. "Chief Nan and I, you can step back. I'll take care of this beast." "Just like me?" Nan and I was a little stunned, but then he understood. He was even more shocked, and his eyes were trembling. Tion had taken the Kylan's tear, but the weird thing was that he didn't have any aura of the dragon rebel. How was that possible? Nan and I shook his head in a daze. He felt like he was in a dream. It was extremely unreal. "Dragon bloodline, I didn't expect you to show up again. I don't care what you ate, but you must die today." The soul-splitting king stared at Tion with his blood-red eyes, and his voice was extremely cold. He had been defeated by Tion twice, and the latter had killed so many soul-splitting wolves. If he let Tion live, the soul-splitting king would be too useless. Tion was the biggest variable in the attack on the dragon rebel tribe. Without him, the dragon rebel tribe would have been destroyed long ago. If he had known this would happen, the soul-splitting monarch would have killed Tion the moment he appeared. Unfortunately, Tion already had the strength to fight him. "Crack Soul King, do you really think you can kill me?" Tianling sneered. There was a hint of contempt in his eyes. Although the soul-searing king had first-level heavenly emperor strength, the dragon chi in Tion's body had absolute suppression on him. Coupled with the mysterious and unfathomable power of stars, Nyetian had full confidence in killing the soul-searing king. Arrogant! Crack Soul King roared furiously. His body trembled slightly, and a ray of black light shot out. It condensed into a black ghost claw in the air and attacked Nyetian. Humph! Facing the soul-sundering king's attack, Nyetianling laughed and stabbed out with his sword. Sword light suddenly blossomed and the sword light rushed out 1,000 meters. Boom! With a loud bang, the black ghost claw and sword shadow collided. Billows that surged to the sky dissipated. The void started to tremble violently. At this moment, Nan and I already retreated several tens of thousands of meters away, looking at the pinnacle showdown in the distance with a shocked expression. Nyetian's strength far exceeded his expectations. At the same time that Nan and I was shocked in his heart, he relaxed considerably. In the void, the two figures retreated several steps at the same time. The first exchange was actually evenly matched. Dragon Vein Brat, you're courting death. The soul-searing king was enraged. His enormous black body tumbled and charged over towards Nyetian like a raging bull. Godly chilling sword. Nyetian's brows did not furrow as he gave a loud cry. Terrifying sword intent gushed out from his body. Light shot out 10,000 meters away, instantly condensing into a 1,000-meter-long light and shadow giant sword, vast and powerful, destroying everything. The light and shadow giant sword surged with the power of lightning, the power of stars, as well as the berserk aura of the proud sword. The instant the giant sword appeared, the entire stretch of sky shook violently. Dark clouds rolled and heaven and earth changed color. The soul-searing king actually disregarded everything and forcefully charged over. What a powerful aura! Nan and I watched from afar as the enormous black wolf was about to collide with the giant sword. His gaze involuntarily trembled, and he retreated another 10,000 meters. He could sense that this exchange would definitely be earth-shattering. Boom! High up in the sky, the giant sword and the black wolf collided. Dazzling light shot out for thousands of meters. Two terrifying forces collided in the void, and vast and boundless power instantly erupted. Buzz! A heavy rumble was heard. It was actually the mournful cry of space being compressed to a high degree. Black cracks tore through the space, like bottomless abysses that could devour everything. Boom! The next moment, a terrifying blast of air spread out in all directions, and everything in the surroundings was instantly annihilated. The ground also shook with a loud rumble. The entire Dragon Rebel Valley was on the verge of collapse, as if it was about to be destroyed in an instant. The extremely dense power of soul-searing, the vast and boundless power of lightning, and the power of stars that could devour everything. Countless powers devoured each other, and the entire space fell into a state of chaos. Nan and I was a little dumbfounded. He could no longer see the figures of Nyetian and the soul-searing king. There was only a chaotic space that drowned everything. He didn't expect that the battle between the two of them would be so fierce. Both of them fought with no regard for their lives, wanting to completely defeat the other party. After an unknown amount of time, the space gradually became clear, and two figures gradually appeared. Nyetian stood tall in the sky. His figure was like a sword, and his silver hair fluttered in the air. His aura was still steady, but there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. On the other hand, the black light around the soul-searing king's body was even more intense. There was not a single wound on his body, and he was completely unharmed. In this head-on collision, Nyetian was slightly weaker than his opponent. The soul-searing king's defense is stronger than I expected. It seems that I underestimated him. Nyetian wiped the blood at the corner of his mouth, but there was a playful smile in his eyes. He had only used the sword casually just now, but the soul-searing wolf had gone all out. Hence, this result was acceptable to Nyetian. The soul-searing king didn't reveal happiness when he saw Nyetian injured, but shock and fear instead. He'd already used all his strength earlier, yet Nye Tian was actually still alive, and this caused him to feel extremely threatened. Stinking brat, who exactly are you? The soul-searing king calmed down slightly, yet his voice carried traces of nervousness that couldn't be concealed. I'm the person that wants to kill you. Nye Tian smiled coldly while the disdain on the corners of his mouth grew even deeper. How dare you? The soul-searing king's eyes flashed, and they actually turned pitch black. Instantly, strands of dense soul-searing energy surged out, and his body actually grew explosively once more. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this scene. He never imagined that the soul-searing king would actually have another trump card. But in the next moment, Nye Tian recovered his calm, and he smiled lightly as he said, "That's fine as well. I'll use you to experience how strong my origin spirit is." As his indifferent voice resounded, a crimson halo surged out from Nye Tian's body, and it surged like a ripple. After that, a giant crimson beast that was almost 1,000 meters in size appeared behind him. It was the 9th-level chaotic beast. Chapter 885. Nye Tian's strength had reached the 9th stage heaven realm, and the 9th extreme chaos beast's body was close to 1,000 meters long. However, this was not the ultimate form of the 9 extreme chaos beast. Back when Nye Tian was a peak stage heavenly Dharch, the 9 extreme beast was 3 to 4,000 meters long. The 9 extreme chaos beast was an even more terrifying primordial spirit than the 9 extreme beast. No one knew how terrifying the 9 extreme chaos beast would be when Nye Tian reached his peak. Roar! The 9 extreme chaos beast roared into the sky. The might of an emperor was vast and mighty, and a terrifying force surged out instantly, causing the void to tremble. The soul-splitting monarch couldn't help but let out a surprised gasp when he saw this. Even though he had transformed, he still seemed tiny in front of the 9th extreme chaos beast. The soul-splitting wolf's blood-red eyes flickered, and it was difficult to suppress the fear in its eyes. Soul-splitting king, since you want to fight, I'll fight with you. Nye Tian stood on the head of the 9 extreme chaos beast. His voice was loud and clear, like a god descending to the mortal world. The 9 extremity chaos beast had been severely injured previously, but after 3 days of nourishment from the Qilin's precious blood, it had recovered to its peak condition. This, and Ainan, who was in the distance, was dumbfounded. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed that there was such a powerful original spirit in the world. His 9-clawed Qilin was already a rank 9 Supreme Being origin spirit, but Nye Tian's origin spirit was clearly even more terrifying than the 9-clawed Qilin. This was already a Super Supreme Being origin spirit that surpassed rank 9. Nye Tian, the legendary Fated One. What kind of terrifying character was he? Up until now, the strength that Nye Tian had displayed had amazed Nan and I again and again. In fact, in Nan Ni's heart, Nye Tian's talent was not inferior to Demon Saint Xianlong's in the past. Nan Ni's evaluation of Nye Tian was ridiculously high because he was able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Demon Saint Xianlong. Nan Ni's gaze became scorching hot. The next battle would be a battle of life and death. This battle was not only about Nye Tian's personal success or failure, but also about the survival of the entire Dragon Rebel tribe. In the sky, 2 huge figures were facing each other, one red and one black. They stood tall like mountains, and their wild auras surged tens of thousands of meters away. Rumble! Terrifying loud noises resounded in the space. Although the 2 giant beasts were not fighting head-on, the confrontation between their auras had already caused the space to tremble endlessly. The soul-sundering king's eyes were crimson red, like 2 balls of fire burning in the void. In the next instant, the soul-sundering wolf's huge body moved. Black light surged, like circles of ripples spreading in the void. Space seemed to be frozen, becoming rigid and filled with the aura of death. Rule force. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, but the determination in his eyes didn't change at all. Compared to Nye Tian, the soul-splitting monarch's greatest advantage was that he was in the heavenly emperor realm. He could use the power of laws and wanted to use laws to suppress Nyetian. However, it was a pity that he had underestimated Nyetian. If Nyetian's strength had been below the 5th tier of the heaven-being realm, he would have been firmly suppressed. However, he was in the 9th tier of the heaven-being realm. Although he hadn't comprehended the power of laws yet, he wasn't afraid of the suppression of laws. Boom! Seeing the black light surging over from the void, Nyetian moved. The huge body of the ninefold chaotic beast swayed, and the space suddenly trembled. The black light, which was spreading rapidly, was blocked by a strong aura. It stagnated for a moment and couldn't advance any further. Seeing this, the soul-splitting monarch was surprised. Obviously, he hadn't expected Nyetian's original spirit to be able to resist the power of laws. This had already broken his understanding of martial arts, because he had never seen a celestial being able to resist the power of laws. Soul-splitting monarch, it's time to end this. Nyetian's eyes suddenly became ice-cold, and the killing intent emanating from his body reached its peak. Even his voice was filled with a chill that made people's hearts palpitate. Buzz! The next moment, the figure of the ninefold chaotic beast moved. Its crimson wings, which were thousands of meters wide, covered the sky, and caused the space to wail endlessly. Nyetian didn't know how long the power of the Qilin tier could last, so he had to end the battle as soon as possible. Roar! The ninefold chaotic beast stepped on the void and came over. Its huge body pulled the whole heaven and earth tightly, as if the world had become small in front of it. The ninefold chaotic beast was extremely fast. It was like a crimson flame, descending from the sky and rushing over. In the space, a terrifying fiery red wave spread out, and the whole sky was reflected red, as if the clouds were burning. What a terrifying aura! And Nan felt the aura of the ninefold chaotic beast from tens of thousands of meters away. His eyes became slightly blurred. He could feel that this aura was even more terrifying than his nine-clawed Qilin, and it was difficult to stop. When the soul-splitting monarch saw the crimson giant beast rushing over, his eyes trembled, and he couldn't help revealing a look of horror. At this moment, the soul-splitting monarch felt an unparalleled aura. And at this moment, he was afraid. The soul-splitting wolf's body swayed, and it actually wanted to escape. However, it was too late. The ninefold chaotic beast left a long crimson trail in the void, and like a burning meteor, it rushed over ferociously. Little Nine, tear this evil beast apart. Nyetian stood on top of the ninefold chaotic beast, his eyes surging with ice-cold, bone-chilling killing intent. Roar! The ninefold chaotic beast let out a soaring roar, and the crimson halo on its body became even more powerful. The crimson flames raged in the void, as if the whole world was about to be ignited. The soul-splitting monarch had nowhere to run. At this critical moment, he could only bite the bullet and rush forward. Even though the soul-splitting wolf's body had already reached a size of 700 to 800 meters, in front of the ninefold chaotic beast, it still seemed very small and could not withstand a single blow. Boom! Boom! The ninefold chaotic beast pounced over ferociously, revealing its ferocity. Its two huge claws were burning with crimson flames, and it directly attacked. The soul-splitting wolf's body surged with a black brilliance, trying to block it, but it was completely useless. Bang! Bang! With two muffled sounds, the ninefold chaotic beast stepped directly on the soul-splitting wolf's shoulders. The soul-splitting wolf's steel-like shoulders could not withstand the huge pressure and were torn apart. Pft, 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 crack, crack, crack. The sound of flesh being torn apart and the sound of bones being broken rang out incessantly. Fresh blood was dripping and glaring, and the white bones were exposed. It was extremely bloody. Awoo! The next moment, the soul-splitting wolf let out an extremely miserable howl, which resounded in a heart-wrenching manner. Gulp! Seeing this scene from afar, Nan Ni's throat kept moving. He swallowed his saliva violently, and his entire person became lifeless. He did not expect the battle between the two giant beasts to be so bloody and glaring. This was completely a direct confrontation between flesh and power. The stronger one would win. It was that simple. The soul-splitting wolf was completely vulnerable in front of the nine-fold chaotic beast. Could not resist at all. This was not only because the dragon energy restrained the soul-splitting aura, but also because the nine-fold chaotic beast was powerful. Nan and I estimated that even his nine-clawed Qilin could not possibly be a match for the nine-fold chaotic beast. Chapter 886. In the void, the battle between the giant beasts was brutal and bloody. The level 9 chaos beast killed it with a single blow. It did not give the soul-splitting wolf any chance to retaliate. The soul-splitting wolf took a blow from the level 9 chaos beast head-on. Its entire shoulder was destroyed and blood rained down. A blood-colored curtain of rain appeared in the sky. Die! Seeing that the soul-splitting wolf was already severely injured, Nie Tian did not hesitate at all. His lips curled into a murderous smile as he murmured. The fiery red wings on the level 9 chaos beast's back were like two sharp swords that pierced through the soul-splitting wolf's chest. Blood poured down like a torrential rain. The entire sky was dyed red, and it looked bloody and demonic. If the soul-splitting wolf and the level 9 chaos beast had fought with all their might, this battle would not have been won so easily. Unfortunately, the soul-splitting king had been timid at the first moment, which had led to his crushing defeat. A wood dash! The soul-splitting wolf let out a final cry. Its huge body trembled in the void, twitched, and swayed. It was about to fall. The soul-splitting king had never dreamed that he would be defeated so thoroughly and so tragically. He had not expected to die in the Dragon Rebel Valley at the hands of Nie Tian. Not long ago, he had not seen Nie Tian as a threat at all. He had not even been interested in looking at him. However, it was this person who had single-handedly turned the entire situation around. And he, the soul-splitting king, had died at the hands of this person. Such an ending made one sigh incessantly. Nie Tian retreated 1,000 meters away. He sensed that the soul-splitting king's vital energy was rapidly disappearing. There was no smile or sympathy on his face. He only looked calm. Defeated? Defeated. In the distance, Nan and I muttered in a daze. He looked almost deranged. His lifeless eyes roamed around Nie Tian's body, and there was actually a hint of admiration in them. Slowly, the soul-splitting wolf's body lost its last bit of vitality and fell with a loud bang. Hum dash! At that moment, a violent sound suddenly came from the void. It sounded like a terrifying wail. Huh! Nie Tian felt the void tremble, and his eyes narrowed. 100-meter-wide, pitch-black crack had appeared in the void. Spatial crack! Seeing this scene, Nie Tian's heart suddenly trembled, and his eyes became fierce. He felt strange. Why would a spatial rift appear out of nowhere? Moreover, it was so huge. Even a battle between high-level heavenly emperor martial artists would find it very hard to cause such a massive spatial crack. Nie Tian looked at the pitch-black abyss in the void and felt a threat from his soul. This spatial crack seemed to have been split open from the inside by someone. It was very strange. Almost at the same time, the soul-splitting wolf's already dim body suddenly released a terrifying black brilliance, spreading out in circles, continuously pouring into the spatial crack. Nie Tian's frown deepened. He seemed to understand something. Lord Nie Tian, what is that? Nan and I, who was standing at the side, was also scared silly. He finally reacted and shouted with a trembling voice. Don't come over. Nie Tian immediately waved his hand, signaling Nan and I not to come closer. His expression was extremely nervous. Nan Ni's figure paused, and a huge fear rose in his heart. He couldn't help but retreat. At that moment, a black passageway formed by soul-splitting chi appeared in the void. It was like a long black snake, and the soul-splitting chi on the soul-splitting king's body kept pouring into the spatial crack. In the next moment, an even more strange scene appeared. The soul-splitting wolf's corpses on the ground were actually controlled by a mysterious force. They all floated up and quickly came to the spatial crack. Countless soul-splitting wolves' bodies surged with soul-splitting chi and were constantly absorbed by the spatial crack. Huh! Seeing this scene, Nye Tian's eyes trembled. He used his divine sense to probe and actually felt the aura of a formation from the spatial crack. This aura seems to be... Nye Tian muttered to himself. Immediately, his expression changed, and his whole body trembled in fear. He cried out involuntarily, "Space-time teleportation formation." That's right. Nye Tian felt the aura of a space-time teleportation formation from the spatial crack. Could this spatial crack be caused by a teleportation formation? Nye Tian was shocked, and a rare look of panic appeared on his face. A teleportation formation directly caused a spatial crack. This was the first time he had seen something like this. Unless this teleportation formation crossed many planes, it was impossible to cause a spatial crack. As Nye Tian speculated inwardly, his face gradually turned pale. Could it be that the Soul Splitter King's death triggered something, and the force behind the Soul Splitter learned of it and sent people to this realm? If the person who came was the force behind the soul-splitting man, his strength was unimaginable. We must stop this teleportation formation. Nye Tian calmed down a little and made a decision. If the person in the spatial crack walked out, it would definitely be a disaster for the entire Dragon Rebel clan. It seemed that the person was absorbing the soul-splitting chi from the soul-splitting wolf's corpses, and was about to step out of the spatial crack. Nye Tian couldn't imagine that someone could withstand the space storm in the spatial crack. An attack of that level could even mince a warrior at the peak of the Heaven Emperor realm into pieces. No matter who the person was, he couldn't let him walk out. At the thought of that, Nye Tian moved, and the beast of ninefold chaos disappeared. Buzz! The next moment, the heaven slash of sword absolute slash let out a clear and intense sword chime. A huge sword shadow suddenly fell, slashing at the passageway formed by the soul-splitting chi. Nye Tian knew that as long as the passageway was destroyed, the person wouldn't be able to absorb the soul-splitting chi and wouldn't be able to come here. Rumble! The terrifying sword slashed down, and the sword chi shot out for thousands of meters, exploding in the air. However, it couldn't destroy the black passageway. Nye Tian felt a strong force, and his body was thrown back hundreds of meters by this force. Puff! After he steadied himself, he spat out a mouthful of blood. What a strange power! Nye Tian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes became frighteningly gloomy. The black passageway looked fragile, but it was wrapped in a terrifying force. Nye Tian's sword did not cause any damage. No, I have to calm down. Nye Tian's eyes flickered, and his eyes regained their calm. He had already used all his strength in the sword just now, but he couldn't destroy the black passageway. Instead, he was injured. This was too terrifying. Nye Tian judged that any means he had now was not enough to destroy the black passageway. The Heaven Shrouding Totem was mainly for control and defense, while the Eye of the Starry Sky was a mental attack. Oh right! At this time, Nye Tian suddenly thought of something. His eyes flickered, and his divine senses entered the raw star stone. He was a 9th-level Heaven Realm warrior now, and his body awakened 290 billion star power. The third layer of the galaxy had already been lit up. Nye Tian wanted to see what would appear in the third layer of the galaxy. This is... Nye Tian looked at the third layer of the galaxy, and his expression instantly became sluggish. Chapter 887. Raw Star Stone in the Realm of the Milky Way. Above the third layer of the Starry River, a huge cauldron that sparkled with starlight floated majestically, emitting an enormous aura. It was simple, vast, distant, and dignified, as if it had existed since time immemorial, protecting the entire starry river. Hellfire Crucible. Nyetian took a long time to calm down. Looking at the starlight cauldron in the void, the shock in his heart could not be any greater. The first star river awakened a sky-shrouding totem, the second star river awakened a starry sky eye, and the third star river awakened a huge cauldron. The cauldron had a strange name. It was called the Hellfire Crucible. The Hellfire Crucible protects all hells, suppresses all demons and devils, melts all creation, and creates the starry sky and the universe. The vast and boundless voice resounded in Nyetian's mind. It was as if the voice originally existed in his mind, giving him a very strange feeling. Suppress all fiendish demons. Nyetian's heart was filled with shock and joy. He was in a state of high excitement. Without a doubt, the Hellfire Crucible was far more powerful than the heaven-shrouding totem and the Eye of the Stars. If the Hellfire Crucible can suppress demons and melt everything, then it should be able to destroy the Black Passageway. Nyetian became cold. His eyes flickered with demonic starlight. He was immersed in great excitement. Let's see how powerful the Hellfire Crucible is, and see what I can do with it. With a thought, Nyetian's World Division Prime formation spun to life, and the power of the stars surged out to form an enormous cauldron of starlight behind him. It was none other than the Hellfire Crucible. As soon as the Hellfire Crucible appeared, the dark clouds in the area were pushed back 10,000 meters, and the entire area was bathed in starlight. Everything within a few thousand meters became like a giant crucible. That's... Seeing the Hellfire Crucible from afar, Nan and I froze for a moment. Then, a pained expression appeared on his face, and his facial features became hideous. He suddenly felt that the absolute shadow restriction formation in his body had become violent, as if it wanted to tear his body apart. Nan's gaze trembled. He didn't dare to stay any longer and retreated hastily. After retreating for tens of thousands of meters, he felt that the absolute shadow restriction had stabilized a little, and his body had recovered a little. What is this big cauldron? Why did the absolute shadow restriction suddenly become violent? Nan was shocked, but he couldn't figure out what was going on. On the other side, Nyetian's expression was as cold as ice, and the Hellfire Crucible behind him was slowly bearing down on the black tunnel. The soul-splitting chi seemed to have sensed an enormous threat, and it became extremely unstable, as if it could dissipate at any moment. The Hellfire Crucible is truly terrifying. Nyetian's lips curled up into a slight smile. He could sense that the soul-shredding energy was terrified of the Hellfire Crucible and was fleeing. Soul-splitting chi, come in. The corner of Nyetian's mouth curled up into a cold smile. With a thought in his mind, the Hellfire Crucible erupted with dazzling starlight, and a massive force slammed into the black passageway. Pooh! A soft sound rang out. The passageway formed by the soul-shredding energy couldn't withstand a single blow from the Hellfire Crucible. It collapsed, turned into black light, and was absorbed by the Hellfire Crucible. As soon as the soul-shredding energy entered the Hellfire Crucible, numerous ghostly faces appeared, howling hoarsely in pain. At the same time, the Hellfire Crucible erupted with starlight flames, which wrapped around the soul-shredding energy and began to refine it. Nyetian's eyes narrowed. He could sense that the flames of the Hellfire Crucible were different from ordinary flames. They were colorful and breathtaking, and contained a very pure power, as if they could melt anything. Starry Holy Flame. The name of the flame suddenly appeared in Nyetian's mind, but he wasn't surprised. He was used to situations like this. Nyetian used his divine sense to examine the starry holy flame. It was a very pure type of flame, far stronger than his 9 heavenly fire, and even more terrifying than most devil flames. Of all the devil flames Nyetian had ever encountered, only the 7th devil fire, the sky flame of the 7th devil fire moth dragon, could compare. Of course, he knew that the starry holy flame was far from reaching its ultimate form. He had only awakened about 30% of his astral power. From what Nye Tian could tell, if his astral power was fully awakened, the starry holy flame would be no weaker than the top 3 devil flames on the devil fire rankings. Primal star stones were terrifying. In the 9 galaxies, each awakening was more terrifying than the last. Nye Tian couldn't wait to reach the Heavenly Emperor level. He wanted to see what terrifying things he would awaken in the 4th galaxy. But right now, the most important thing was to deal with the situation in front of him. Although the black passageway had been absorbed by the Hellfire Crucible, the spatial rift was still there. Moreover, Nye Tian sensed an extremely terrifying soul aura in the rift. It was very violent, as if it wanted to come out of the rift. At this moment, Nye Tian's eyes suddenly flashed. An idea that shocked even himself came to mind. He wanted to release the person in the spatial rift. Nye Tian knew that the person in the spatial rift must be from the faction behind the Soul Splitter. And this faction was the one who had manipulated everything in the past. It was this faction that had used the Dragon Rebel tribe to destroy the Dragon tribe and other races. Nye Tian didn't know why humans and other races had survived, but he was very interested in who the faction behind this was. Because it was very likely that this faction had warriors above the immortal realm. The immortal realm was a realm that all warriors yearned to reach. Immortal realm warriors could compete with the world and shine as brightly as the sun and the moon. Who wouldn't yearn for that? Okay. Suddenly, Nye Tian's eyes were full of determination. He smiled and said lightly, "Since you want to come out, I will let you out." The next moment, Nye Tian controlled the Hellfire Crucible to slowly approach the spatial rift. He released the soul-cracking chi in the Hellfire Crucible and poured it into the spatial rift. "Master, what are you doing?" The corpse demon king suddenly came to his senses, and his voice became shrill. If he didn't know Nye Tian very well, he would have thought that the person in front of him was a lunatic. Nye Tian wanted to release the person in the spatial rift. This was too crazy. Nye Tian's eyes were calm. He knew exactly what he was doing. Slowly, as the soul-cracking chi poured into the spatial rift, the space-time teleportation matrix was gradually perfected, and the soul aura in the rift became stronger and stronger. "It's about time. Come out." Nye Tian put away the Hellfire Crucible and retreated 1,000 meters away. He stared at the abyss-like rift with burning eyes. Boom! Just as he retreated, the crack in space suddenly burst open and expanded. Then, a huge array surged out from it, and in the center of the matrix stood a black figure. The figure's aura wasn't strong, but it gave people a strong sense of oppression. Chapter 888. Inside the spatial rift, a grand array appeared. A black light figure walked out of the array. Although the aura was not strong, it gave people a very oppressive feeling. The instant Nye Tian's divine sense probed over, his gaze could not help quivering. He actually sensed that this black light figure had 9th-level Heavenly Emperor strength. 9th-level Heavenly Emperor, this kind of strength, even in the Heaven Realm's divine realm, it was also a powerhouse standing at the apex. Nye Tian did not expect that the other party's strength was actually so strong. He was very curious. Just now, he clearly did not sense a powerful aura. Furthermore, even if this person was standing in front of him, the aura was still not strong, not like a 9th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist. But Nye Tian sensed his strength, and it was indeed 9th-level Heavenly Emperor. Very strange. The soul aura on this person's body is very strong. Could he be? The next instant, Nye Tian suddenly discovered something. His gaze turned intent, and he said in surprise in his heart, "Soul clone." Right. It must be a soul clone. Nye Tian saw that the arrival was not a corporeal body but a phantom condensed from black light, and he was even more certain of his guess. Right at this time, the black light figure walked out, his entire body suffused with black light, making people unable to see his face clearly. This kind of black light was very similar to soul-splitting aura, but it was even stronger than soul-splitting aura. Amen? The man looked at Nyetian and seemed to be very confused. He let out a surprised sound, but soon after, he laughed and said, "A man born with a dragon bloodline. Could it be that he is the destined one in the prophecy?" Destined one, this person similarly mentioned this point. This showed that he also knew about the Dragon Rebel clan's heaven's secret prophecy. "Who are you?" Nyetian became cold and opened his mouth indifferently, his expression carrying extreme iciness. The other party came from the faction behind the soul-splitting person. Although it was just a soul clone, Nyetian could not determine its combat power, so he did not dare to be careless. That person did not answer Nyetian's question but surveyed the surroundings. Seeing countless soul-splitting wolf corpses, his entire body immediately released unconcealable rage, and he asked coldly, "You killed these soul-splitting person?" These soul-splitting wolf corpses were drawn by a strange force, suspending in midair. "So what if I am?" Nye Tianling replied coldly. He was ready to fight. That person was taken aback for a moment before letting out a strange laugh. "You're actually not afraid of me?" "Afraid?" Nye Tian laughed and said, "Why should I be afraid?" This person didn't know that if it weren't for Nye Tian, he wouldn't have been able to walk out of the spatial rift. "Very good." The man laughed weirdly again. Then his voice turned cold. He said, "Now that I'm here, it means the doomsday of the Dragon Rebel clan has come. And you will be the first to die." As the arrogant voice rang out, that person clenched his hand, and a black vortex appeared, instantly condensing into a black longsword that emitted a strange aura, sharp and cold. Without any nonsense, that person directly stabbed out with his sword. The void suddenly trembled, and a black trajectory appeared. The black sword light shot out thousands of meters away, turning into a murderous sword shadow, directly attacking Nye Tian. "You're just a soul doppelganger. How dare you be so arrogant?" Nye Tian's face was cold. He also stabbed out with his sword. The mighty sword will rolled out, and a giant sword shadow appeared in the void. With the momentum of a thunderbolt, it pressed over crazily. Boom! The two swords collided. With a loud bang, the void shook. The black sword shadow was swallowed up directly and disappeared without a trace. Huh! That person was surprised again. He didn't expect Nye Tian's sword will to be so powerful. This time, he showed a trace of panic. He retreated hurriedly and was forced to thousands of meters away by the sword shadow. "Very good." Nye Tianling smiled coldly. He moved and came to the space-time teleportation formation. He suddenly raised the corner of his mouth and murmured, "Since you're here, don't think about leaving." Even as the words left his mouth, the hellfire crucible behind him began to grow larger, and red flames sprang up to surround the teleportation portal, as if to devour it. "What do you think you're doing, you stinking brat?" the person said in a shrill voice. If the teleportation formation was swallowed up, the spatial rift would close, and he wouldn't be able to return. "You're just a soul doppelganger," Yang Qi said. "If your true self were here, I might be a bit afraid. But a mere clone dares to be so arrogant? You'll pay the price." Nye Tian chuckled coldly, and the hellfire crucible grew even more berserk. Starry Sagafire began to devour the teleportation formation. The hellfire crucible could melt anything and everything. Even teleportation formations could be devoured. "No!" the person screamed, his voice shrill and filled with panic. Unfortunately, it was too late. Starry Sagafire spread out, burning the entire sky. The teleportation formation was swallowed up, and the flames poured into the hellfire crucible. Whiz! In that instant, space let out a mournful wail, and the spatial rift closed up. Almost at the same time, the soul-split wolf corpses lost their support and fell to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. The spatial rift vanished and the person froze. The black light around him dimmed a little, and a terrified expression appeared on his face. The disappearance of the spatial rift meant that he would never be able to return to his original place. He could only stay in this minor world. Nye Tian destroyed the teleportation formation, and his mouth twitched into a cold smile. A peak Heavenly Emperor's soul doppelganger. I want to see just how strong it is. The soul doppelganger in front of him wasn't complete. Perhaps it had descended too hastily, and its aura was lacking. Even so, Nye Tian estimated that the other party's strength was at least comparable to an ordinary second or third level Heavenly Emperor. Bastard! That person was enraged and roared explosively. The black longsword pierced through the sky. The sword light bloomed, and the black light enveloped a region of heaven and earth. The entire space became dim. Nye Tian felt a powerful pressure, but he did not have any fear. Instead, his figure moved, stabbing straight out with a sword. The terrifying sword intent was sharp to the extreme. The flowing light sword light pierced through the darkness and rumbled over. Rumble! With a loud bang, Nye Tian's sword intent directly devoured the darkness, forcing that person back again. Bang! With a muffled sound, that person was actually struck by the sword light, his figure flying out backward, drawing out a black trajectory in the air. Strange! Nye Tian's figure froze in midair, his brows furrowing slightly. The other party's combat strength was not weak. Why was he actually unable to withstand a single blow under his sword? Since when did a 9th-level Heavenly Emperor's soul doppelganger become so lousy? The corners of Nye Tian's mouth curled up as he muttered to himself. At this time, that person stabilized his figure. Hearing Nye Tian's words, he immediately flew into a violent rage and roared loudly, "Dragon vein! It's the dragon vein again! If not for the dragon vein in your body, how can you possibly be this Empyrean's match? Even if it's just a soul doppelganger, this Empyrean can also easily exterminate you."